On the day of our daughter's funeral, my husband booked a first-class trip to Bali with his brother and mistress. His text dripped with cruelty. "We're celebrating new beginnings. Bury her alone, you're used to being pathetic." So I blocked all their bank accounts and mortgage loans, which I'm paying monthly. They called me in shock. 109 missed calls. The text message lit up my phone screen as I stood alone in the funeral home bathroom, my black dress still immaculate because I hadn't allowed myself to cry. Not yet. The makeup I'd applied with trembling hands at 5 a.m. remained perfect, unlike everything else in my life. "We're celebrating new beginnings. Bury her alone, you're used to being pathetic." My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped the phone into the sink. The accompanying photo showed Joshua, his brother Charles, and a blonde I recognized as Melissa from Joshua's office, toasting with champagne glasses on what was clearly a first-class flight. The timestamp, 10:24 a.m., exactly 4 minutes after our daughter Emma's casket had been closed. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that while this story contains heartbreak, it also reveals the extraordinary strength that emerges when we're tested beyond measure. If you believe in the power of resilience and rebuilding after betrayal, consider subscribing. It's completely free and helps us share more stories of people who found their way through impossible situations. Now, let's witness Scarlett's journey as she transforms a husband's cruel text into the first step toward reclaiming her life. I braced myself against the cold marble countertop, bile rising in my throat. The funeral director would be looking for me. 75 guests were waiting in uncomfortable silence for the grieving mother to lead the procession to the cemetery. But I couldn't move. My legs had turned to concrete as I stared at that message again. "Bury her alone, you're used to being pathetic." 3 weeks ago, as Emma took her final labored breaths in the pediatric oncology ward, a place we'd called home for 11 months, Joshua had claimed he needed to handle some work things to ensure we wouldn't face financial hardship after the inevitable. I'd been too exhausted, too devastated to question him. I just held our daughter's hand tighter and whispered that Daddy loved her but had to work. Another lie in a long chain of them I'd told to protect her from the truth. My mind flashed back to sitting alone with the hospital's financial counselor 6 months earlier, mortgaging our home to cover the experimental treatment insurance wouldn't pay for. Joshua had been too emotional to join those meetings. I remembered calling him from the pharmacy when Emma's pain medication cost $1,200 out of pocket, and he told me to just figure it out. I'd emptied my retirement account while he apparently figured out vacation plans. A knock on the bathroom door jolted me back to the funeral home. "Mrs. Bennett? Is everything all right?" The funeral director's voice was practiced in its gentle concern. "1 minute," I called, my voice surprisingly steady. I stared at my reflection. My daughter was dead. My husband was halfway across the Pacific with his mistress. And for the first time in our 15-year marriage, I saw myself clearly. A woman who had carried everything. The mortgage payments, the medical bills, the emotional burden, the nighttime vigils beside our daughter's hospital bed. All while Joshua had been planning his escape. The rage that swept through me was unfamiliar and clarifying, like stepping from a foggy room into sharp sunlight. I slipped my phone into my clutch purse and straightened my shoulders. "I'm ready now," I told the funeral director as I emerged. I walked down the aisle between sympathetic faces, past Emma's favorite teacher, her little friends from before the cancer, my colleagues who had donated sick days so I could stay with her during treatments. Not a single person from Joshua's side of the family was present. Now I understood why. At the cemetery, as they lowered my little girl's white casket into the ground, I didn't collapse as everyone expected. The earth was accepting my daughter's body, but I refused to let it swallow me too. Instead, with each handful of dirt I scattered over her casket, my resolve hardened. The reception passed in a blur of casseroles and condolences. My sister Katie stayed until the last guest left, helping clean up and watching me with worried eyes. "You can stay with us tonight, Scarlett. You shouldn't be alone," she offered, squeezing my hand. "I have things to do here," I replied. The calm in my voice surprised even me. After Katie reluctantly left, I went to Emma's room. I hadn't entered it since the day the ambulance took her for the final time. Her stuffed elephant still sat propped against the pillows, waiting for a child who would never return. On her nightstand was the framed photo of the 3 of us at the beach, before the diagnosis, before I learned who Joshua truly was. I picked up the frame, studying Joshua's face. Had he already been seeing Melissa then? Was he already fantasizing about new beginnings while our 5-year-old built sandcastles? The coldness of his betrayal swept over me anew. During Emma's illness, I'd withdrawn nearly everything from my personal savings to pay for treatments, second opinions, special foods that wouldn't make her nauseous, gas driving to specialists 3 states away. Meanwhile, Joshua had apparently been squirreling away funds for his grand escape. I sank onto Emma's bed, the weight of everything threatening to crush me. For one dangerous moment I considered just letting it happen, giving in to grief, ignoring Joshua's betrayal, falling apart completely. It would be easier than facing any of this. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Joshua said you wanted to handle the funeral alone, but if there's anything I can do..." This is Melissa, by the way. The audacity stole my breath. So she didn't even know she was part of his escape plan during our daughter's funeral? Another manipulation. Another lie. I didn't respond to Melissa. Instead, I opened my banking app with newfound purpose. I worked as a bookkeeper for a construction company. Numbers were my refuge, my expertise. And Joshua had always been too busy to handle our finances. Every account was in my name or jointly held. The mortgage I paid from my personal account because Joshua claimed his freelance income was too irregular. The credit cards he used so freely were all on my credit, opened when his score had tanked after college. Even his new car was financed under my name because we'd gotten a better rate that way. My fingers moved with precision as I transferred funds, changed passwords and froze cards. With each action my breakdown receded further. This wasn't just revenge, it was self-preservation. Joshua had left me alone to bury our daughter. I wouldn't let him leave me destitute too. By midnight I had locked down every account, redirected automatic payments to my personal account, and left exactly $103 in our joint checking. $1 for each missed call that would eventually light up my phone when reality hit them in paradise. I finally allowed myself to lie down on Emma's bed, clutching her elephant to my chest. The tears came then, not just for my daughter but for the life I thought we had, for the husband I believed would stand beside me on the worst day of my life. Mourning would bring consequences and complications. But as I drifted into exhausted sleep, I felt something unexpected beneath the grief and rage. A flicker of power I'd forgotten I possessed. Joshua thought he was escaping to a new beginning. He had no idea I was starting one of my own. I woke before dawn, Emma's stuffed elephant still clutched to my chest. For one merciful moment I forgot everything, then reality crashed back with crushing force. But the paralyzing grief that had stalked me for months had transformed overnight into something harder, more focused. My phone showed 17 missed calls, all from international numbers. They'd discovered the first part of my plan. I switched it to Do Not Disturb and headed to the kitchen. Coffee in hand, I settled at the dining room table that had doubled as my home office for the past decade. The irony wasn't lost on me that the career Joshua had always subtly belittled, just a bookkeeper, was now my greatest weapon. Numbers had always made sense to me when people didn't. Balance sheets couldn't lie. Accounts couldn't hide their secrets from someone who knew where to look. I'd started handling our finances 3 months into our marriage when Joshua bounced checks for our rent and utilities in the same week. "I'm creative, not analytical," he'd explained with that charming smile that once made my heart flip. "You're so much better at this stuff, Scarlett." What began as managing our household budget expanded as Joshua's freelance graphic design business grew. I tracked his invoices, filed his taxes, and quietly fixed his financial mistakes. When we purchased our home 7 years ago, I'd made the down payment with an inheritance from my grandmother. When his car was repossessed after he forgot to make payments, I financed his new one under my spotless credit. And when Emma got sick, I was the one who navigated the labyrinth of medical bills, insurance claims, and payment plans while working full-time and spending nights at the hospital. I opened my laptop and pulled up our financial spreadsheets, meticulous records of every transaction for the past 15 years. Contrary to what Joshua believed, I hadn't acted rashly last night. I'd simply implemented the contingency plan I'd created months ago when I first noticed unusual withdrawals from our savings account. $500 here, $1,000 there. Small enough that I might not notice, but I always did. I'd convinced myself he was planning a surprise vacation for when Emma recovered, or perhaps setting aside money for her future treatments. The truth was infinitely crueler. My first call was to our mortgage lender. I need to discuss a hardship situation, I explained to the representative, my voice steady. I've been making payments solely from my income following my daughter's extended illness and recent passing. I need to arrange a temporary forbearance while I sort out my finances. The woman's voice softened when I mentioned Emma's death. People become instantly accommodating when you tell them your child has died. One of the few advantages of this nightmare. Next came the credit card companies. I didn't cancel the cards. That would alert Joshua immediately. Instead, I reported suspected fraudulent activity on our joint cards, ensuring they'd be frozen pending investigation. His personal cards, which I'd added him as an authorized user on years ago, were simpler. I just removed him. By noon, I had systematically dismantled Joshua's financial access while protecting myself. I printed confirmation emails and filed them in a new folder labeled Fortress. The metaphor felt appropriate. I was building walls to protect what remained of my life. My phone continued to vibrate with incoming calls. Finally I answered. What the hell did you do? Joshua's voice was tight with panic and rage. Airport announcements echoed in the background. Hello to you too. How's Bali? The weather must be lovely this time of year. Scarlett, my cards aren't working. The hotel is threatening to call the police. That sounds like a personal problem. My voice was calm, almost conversational. This isn't funny. We're stranded. You mean you, Charles, and your girlfriend? The one you brought to our daughter's funeral day. Silence then, I can explain. I buried our daughter yesterday, Joshua. Alone. While you were taking selfies in first class. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're celebrating new beginnings, right? Starting fresh without the burden of a sick child and pathetic wife. I quoted his text verbatim, each word precise and cutting. That was just the truth. Finally. No more pretending. I heard muffled voices, Charles probably. Then Joshua's voice returned, suddenly conciliatory. Baby, I know you're upset. You have every right to be. But this isn't the way to handle things. If you'll just transfer some money for our tickets home. No. The simplicity of my response seemed to stun him. What do you mean, no? It's a complete sentence, Joshua. Figure it out yourself. I ended the call and blocked his number. The house felt eerily quiet afterward. I wandered through rooms that held the ghost of Emma's laughter, rooms where Joshua and I had once built a life that now seemed like an elaborate fiction. In our home office, I began gathering financial documents I'd need for the divorce attorney I planned to call tomorrow. As I pulled files from the cabinet, a leather-bound book tumbled out from behind them. I didn't recognize it at first, not until I opened it and saw the careful, rounded handwriting on the first page. Asterisk Emma's super secret journal, not for parents. My hands trembled as I held it. Emma had been only 7 when she was diagnosed. By the end, she'd been too weak to write. This journal must be from before. I hesitated, feeling like an intruder. These were her private thoughts, not meant for my eyes. But she was gone, and these pages were all I had left of her inner world. The first entry was from her 6th birthday. Asterisk Daddy promised to take me to the aquarium today, but he had to work again. Mommy made my cake with purple frosting and took me to see the dolphins anyway. He said Daddy would come next time. I wish next time was today. Asterisk. Simple words that cut deeper than Joshua's deliberate cruelty. I started to close the journal, not ready for this additional pain, when a folded paper slipped out from between the pages. I opened it to find a crayon drawing. A small stick figure with yellow hair standing between 2 taller figures. At the bottom, in Emma's handwriting, when I grow up I want to help people with money like Mommy does. Like a key turning in a lock, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about punishing Joshua anymore. This was about honoring the little girl who had watched me more closely than I'd realized, who had seen strength in me when I'd felt only exhaustion. My phone rang again, Charles this time. I declined the call and placed Emma's journal carefully on my desk. Tomorrow would bring more battles, more decisions. But tonight, I would read my daughter's words and find my way forward through her eyes. I curled up in Emma's reading nook. A window seat cushioned with pillows she'd helped pick out, under twinkling fairy lights we'd strung together during her brief remission. Outside, darkness had fallen, but I couldn't bring myself to turn on any lights besides the soft glow above me. The journal lay heavy in my lap, its leather cover worn at the corners from being handled by small hands. My fingers traced the embossed letters of her name. Was this an invasion? The last privacy my daughter had? The rational part of me knew Emma was beyond caring about such things now, but motherhood had taught me to protect her boundaries, even when they frustrated me. "I'm sorry, sweet pea," I whispered into the empty room. "I need to hear your voice again." I opened to the second entry, dated shortly after her 6th birthday. Today at school Mrs. Wilson asked what our parents do. I said my mommy helps people with numbers and my daddy draws pictures for computers. Tommy said that's not a real job and I got mad. Daddy's job is real. He just does it different places sometimes. Like at his friend's house when he doesn't come home for dinner. My breath caught. Even then she'd been making excuses for him. Creating stories that made sense of his absences. I flipped forward through pages of typical 6-year-old observations. Which dinosaur was best? Always the Triceratops. Which girl in class was mean? Brittany with the pink backpack. Which boy she'd marry someday? Either Thomas from Reading Group or Captain America. Normal thoughts from before our world imploded. Then came the entry dated 3 days after her diagnosis. The doctor told Mommy and Daddy I'm really sick. Mommy cried in the bathroom but pretended she didn't. Daddy looked at his phone a lot. I'm scared but I don't want them to know. Mommy says I'm the bravest girl she knows. I have to be brave for her. Tears blurred my vision. I'd thought I'd hidden my fear from her. All those nights sobbing silently in hospital bathrooms, washing my face afterward, practicing smiles in the mirror, and she'd known anyway. The entries grew shorter as treatments intensified. Some pages contained only doodles or pasted hospital bracelets. Others held observations about nurses she liked or foods that didn't make her feel sick. One entry from about 5 months into treatment made me pause. Daddy came today. He brought me a new game for my tablet and stayed for 2 whole hours. When Mommy went to get coffee he told me a secret. He said sometimes grown-ups get really sad and scared, and they do things that might seem mean but aren't really mean. He said if he's not at the hospital a lot, it's not because he doesn't love me. It's because he loves me so much it hurts him to see me sick. I told him it's okay. I understand about being scared. I set the journal down, trembling with fury. He'd manipulated our daughter into absolving him of his absence, making a 7-year-old comfort him rather than the other way around. After several deep breaths, I continued reading. The entries became more sporadic as Emma grew weaker. Most were short, observations about favorite TV shows or which hospital food was least disgusting. Then about 3 weeks before the end I found an entry that looked different. The handwriting was shakier but the words were more mature. Nurse Jen helped me write this because my hands are too tired. I had a dream last night that I was a bird. I could fly anywhere and nothing hurt. I wasn't scared anymore. I think dying might be like that. Mom keeps saying I'll get better but I know that's not true. I wish she would talk to me about it. Dad doesn't come much now. Last time he was here he was on the phone in the hallway talking about Melissa and how complicated everything is. Mom thinks I don't know about Melissa but hospital rooms have thin walls. My fingers went numb. She'd known. All those months I'd been protecting her from the truth about Joshua, and she'd known anyway. 2 pages later I found an entry that broke my heart anew. I made Dad promise something today. I asked him to take care of Mom after I'm gone. He cried and said of course he would. I hope he wasn't lying. Mom needs someone to make her laugh. She hasn't laughed in so long. I don't want her to be alone. The tears came freely now. He'd promised our dying daughter he would care for me, then booked a flight to Bali for her funeral day. The final entry was dated just days before she slipped into her final coma. Mom, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry. I tried really hard to stay. Please don't be sad forever. Remember how we always said we'd open that bakery someday? The one with the blue door and cupcakes with too much frosting? You should still do that. Name a cupcake after me, something with sprinkles. Also, I know about Dad and Melissa. It's okay. Some people aren't strong like you. Some people run away when things get scary. Don't be mad at him forever. But don't let him make you feel small either. You're the strongest person I know. P.S. It's okay if you find someone new to love. I just want you to be happy. That's my last wish. I closed the journal, pressing it to my chest as sobs racked my body. My brilliant, perceptive child had seen everything. Joshua's betrayal, my attempts to shield her, the fractures in our family. She'd carried those burdens silently, comforting me when I should have been comforting her. When the tears finally subsided, I felt different. The vindictive satisfaction I'd felt while freezing Joshua's account seemed hollow now. Emma wouldn't want me consumed by revenge. She wouldn't want me defined by bitterness. Yet she also wouldn't want me to simply forgive and forget, to let Joshua continue making me feel small. She'd seen my strength even when I couldn't. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the missed calls. Now 37 from various international numbers, plus 16 text messages growing increasingly desperate. I wasn't ready to respond yet. First, I needed a plan that honored what Emma had seen in me. I walked to my home office and opened a new spreadsheet. At the top, I titled it Emma's Wishes. The first item I typed was bakery with blue door and too much frosting. The second was live with strength, not bitterness. As dawn broke over the empty house, I looked at what I'd created. Not just a list of tasks but a roadmap through grief. My daughter had given me one final precious gift. Permission to find happiness again, coupled with the wisdom to set boundaries that protected that possibility. I would make Joshua face consequences for his betrayal, but I wouldn't let that mission consume me. That wasn't the legacy Emma deserved. 3 days after discovering Emma's journal, I was arranging fresh flowers on her grave when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We landed at JFK. Joshua has nowhere to go. He's a mess, Scarlett. Can we talk? Charles. I didn't reply. Let them squirm a little longer. The early spring air carried the scent of damp earth as I traced Emma's engraved name with my fingertips. I'm trying, sweet pea, I whispered. I'm trying to find the balance. That evening, my doorbell rang as I was reviewing paperwork from the attorney I'd hired. Through the peephole, I saw 3 haggard figures: Joshua, Charles, and Melissa. Joshua's normally immaculate appearance had deteriorated. His designer clothes were rumpled, his face unshaven. Dark circles shadowed his bloodshot eyes. I considered not answering, but that wasn't the path I'd chosen. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door but blocked the entrance. We need to talk, Joshua said, his voice hoarse. You need to talk, I corrected him. I don't need anything from you. Charles stepped forward, always the mediator between us even during small disagreements. Scarlett, please. We had to borrow money for economy tickets home. The hotel in Bali held our passports until the embassy intervened. We're exhausted. That sounds challenging, I replied evenly. Similar to arranging a funeral while grieving alone. Melissa hovered behind them, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, looking nothing like the glamorous woman from the flight photo. Her eyes darted nervously between Joshua and me. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. You have 30 minutes. They filed in silently. Joshua moved automatically toward the liquor cabinet, but I blocked his path. Not in my house. Not anymore. He flinched but retreated to the sofa. Charles and Melissa perched awkwardly on the love seat across from him, their body language revealing the fractures in their alliance. I remained standing. You've destroyed me, Joshua began, his tone accusatory. No, I said calmly. I simply stopped enabling you. We were married for 15 years. During which I paid the mortgage, covered Emma's medical bills, and kept us afloat while you, what exactly? Planned your escape? Built a life with her. I gestured toward Melissa, who flushed crimson. It wasn't like that, Melissa interjected, her voice trembling. He told me you two were separated, that you wanted him to move on. When exactly did this separation happen? I asked, turning to her. During our daughter's chemotherapy? Or perhaps during her bone marrow transplant? Melissa's eyes widened. He turned to Joshua. You said Emma was in remission months ago. You said. He says a lot of things, I interrupted, reaching for Emma's journal on the coffee table. Like promising our dying daughter he'd take care of me after she was gone. Joshua paled. You read her journal? Every word. Including the entries where she mentioned overhearing your phone calls about Melissa. I opened to the marked page. Including where she wrote that hospital rooms have thin walls. Charles stood abruptly. You were carrying on with this affair while your daughter was dying? You told me it started after. Charles, it's complicated, Joshua began. No, it's actually quite simple, I said, closing the journal gently. Emma knew everything. He protected you, Joshua. A 7-year-old child shielded her father from judgment while fighting for her life. The silence that followed was deafening. Melissa wiped tears from her cheeks. Charles paced the room, running his hands through his hair in agitation. Joshua stared at the floor. I can't defend what I did. But you didn't have to financially ruin me. You did that yourself, I countered. Every credit card in your wallet is in my name. Every loan payment comes from my account. For 15 years I carried this family while you took credit for our stability. What do you want, Scarlett? Charles asked quietly. Money? The house. I almost laughed. I already have those things. They were always mine. Then what? Joshua demanded, desperation edging his voice. I sat down across from him, placing Emma's journal between us. I want you to understand what you've lost. Not just your financial stability or your comfortable life. You lost the chance to truly know your daughter. This brilliant, perceptive, compassionate person who saw through all of us but loved us anyway. My voice remained steady as I continued. I've been advised to pursue full financial separation. My attorney believes I have grounds to claim everything, given the circumstances. Joshua's face crumpled. Charles placed a hand on his brother's shoulder, while Melissa stared out the window, visibly disconnected from this family drama she'd entangled herself in. But that's not what Emma would want, I said softly. So here are my terms. From my folder I withdrew 3 copies of a document my attorney had prepared. You will relinquish all claims to this house and its contents. You will assume responsibility for your personal debts. I will transfer $5,000 to a new account for you, enough to secure temporary housing and necessities. Nothing more. $5,000? After 15 years of marriage. Joshua looked incredulous. Be grateful, Charles muttered. She could take everything. In exchange, I continued as if neither had spoken, you will sign over your half of Emma's college fund, which I established and funded entirely, to the Pediatric Cancer Foundation that supported us. You will also agree to attend grief counseling. Grief counseling? Joshua scoffed. I don't need. It's non-negotiable. I pushed the papers toward him. Emma believed you loved her. Whether that's true or not, you owe her this much. Melissa finally spoke, her voice barely audible. I didn't know about any of this. About Emma still being sick, about the funeral. She turned to Joshua. You let me believe we were starting something honest. Melissa, Joshua began, but she cut him off. I can't do this. She stood abruptly. I'm sorry for your loss, Scarlett. Truly. I would never have. Her voice trailed off as she grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Charles watched her leave, then turned to his brother. You've been lying to everyone. Even me. The disappointment in his voice was palpable. Joshua sat motionless, the papers untouched before him. The facade of the charming, confident man I'd married had completely crumbled, revealing someone I barely recognized, fragile, desperate, hollow. Sign the papers, Joshua, I said quietly. Not for me. For Emma. His hand shook as he reached for the pen. As he signed each page, I felt no triumph, no vindication. Only a profound sadness for what might have been and a quiet certainty that I was honoring Emma's last wishes. Standing in my strength without being consumed by bitterness. Charles signed as witness, then helped his broken brother to his feet. At the door, Joshua turned back. I did love her, Scarlett. In my way. I thought of all the possible responses, the accusations I could hurl, the hurt I could unleash. Instead, I simply said, I know you believe that. Goodbye, Joshua. As the door closed behind them, I returned to Emma's journal and added a third item to my Emma's Wishes spreadsheet. Find a way forward with grace, not just anger. The house felt different now, still filled with grief but no longer charged with betrayal. The reckoning I'd imagined for so long had come, but it had changed form. Not a victory over Joshua, but a reclaiming of my own narrative. Spring turned to summer, summer to fall, and before I knew it, the seasons had completed their cycle. The first anniversary of Emma's death arrived with a physical heaviness I hadn't anticipated. I woke that morning expecting to be crushed by grief all over again. Instead, I felt a strange, quiet resolve. I'd taken the day off work, assuming I'd need to hide away from the world. But as the morning light filtered through my bedroom curtains, now a sunny yellow instead of the muted gray Joshua had preferred. I realized I didn't want to spend this day alone with memories. At Emma's grave, I didn't bring flowers like the other cemetery visitors. Instead, I brought baking ingredients, a portable table, and a confused-looking woman named Diane whom I'd met at the grief support group I'd reluctantly joined 6 months earlier. "Are you sure about this?" Diane asked, watching me set up a small camp stove beside Emma's headstone. Her own son Tyler had died of leukemia 3 months after Emma. "Absolutely," I replied, laying out measuring cups and flour. "Emma and I always talked about opening a bakery with too much frosting. Today we're making that happen even if it's just for one day." By noon, 5 other parents from our support group had joined us. We baked cupcakes right there in the cemetery, laughing through tears as we shared stories of our children. The groundskeeper eyed us suspiciously until I explained what we were doing, then quietly went to get his own folding chair. "To Emma," I said, raising a cupcake topped with an obscene amount of pink frosting and rainbow sprinkles. "Who taught me that grief doesn't have to be solemn to be meaningful?" As the others raised their cupcakes in a bittersweet toast, I realized I was honoring Emma in exactly the way she would have wanted, with joy breaking through the sorrow, with community instead of isolation. The following week, I met with my attorney to finalize the divorce. The process had dragged on longer than necessary due to Joshua's periodic attempts to negotiate better terms. Each time, I simply referred him back to the original agreement, adding another small condition until he realized the price of his delays. "He's signed everything," my attorney said, sliding the final papers across her desk. "No contested points, no last-minute demands." I scanned the documents, seeing Joshua's familiar signature on the final page. Just like that, 15 years of marriage dissolved into legal terminology and notarized signatures. "How do you feel?" she asked as I signed my own name. I considered the question carefully. "Lighter," I finally said. "Like I've set down something I've been carrying too long." On my way home, I stopped at the small office space I'd leased the month before. The sign on the door read "Balanced Books and Bridges. Financial support for families in crisis." The idea had come to me gradually as I helped Diane untangle the medical bills and insurance claims that had overwhelmed her after Tyler's death. What began as friendly advice had evolved into a mission. I discovered that many families facing medical crises or the death of a child were drowning in paperwork and financial stress. My skills as a bookkeeper, combined with my personal experience, positioned me uniquely to help. I unlocked the door and breathed in the smell of fresh paint and new beginnings. The walls were a soft blue, Emma's favorite color, and the reception area featured comfortable chairs rather than the sterile furniture of most financial offices. In the corner stood a small play area for children whose parents needed consultations. 2 days a week I would continue at my regular bookkeeping job. The other 3 I would help families navigate the financial maze of medical care, insurance claims, and if necessary funeral expenses, all on a sliding scale based on their ability to pay. Back home I walked through rooms that had gradually transformed over the months. The formal dining room Joshua had insisted on maintaining but rarely used was now my home office, with Emma's artwork framed on the walls alongside my professional certificates. The living room furniture had been rearranged to create a reading nook similar to the one in Emma's bedroom. Emma's room itself had been the hardest to address. For months, I'd kept it exactly as she'd left it. The door closed most days because the sight of her untouched things brought too much pain. Then one day, after a particularly good session with my therapist, I'd opened her curtains and let the sunlight in. Now half the room remained Emma's space. Her bookshelf, her favorite stuffed animals, her collection of rocks and feathers arranged on a special shelf. But the other half had become a creative area where I painted clumsy watercolors and crafted handmade cards for the families I worked with. Not erasing Emma but allowing her space to exist alongside my own growth. As evening fell, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine. The garden had been Joshua's domain, meticulously maintained for appearances when neighbors visited. Now it was gloriously, intentionally imperfect. Wildflowers grew among the vegetables. A small stone path wound to a bench beneath the maple tree where Emma had once played. My phone buzzed with a text from Katie. * checking on you today. Love you sis. *. As I typed a response, I noticed an email notification from Charles. We'd had minimal contact since the confrontation with Joshua, just a few awkward exchanges as he helped his brother move the last of his belongings. Curious, I opened it. Scarlet. Wanted you to know Joshua started grief counseling last month. He's staying with me temporarily but looking for work in Colorado. Also, I drove by your office space yesterday. It looks perfect. Emma would be proud. Charles. Unexpected tears blurred my vision. Not from grief or anger but from something that felt strangely like peace. I hadn't destroyed Joshua, despite having the power to do so. And in choosing restraint, I'd found a strength I didn't know I possessed. My revenge had transformed into something Emma would recognize. Not a hollow victory over someone who had hurt me, but a reclaiming of my own worth and purpose. I closed my eyes and imagined Emma beside me on the porch, eating sprinkle-covered cupcakes and chattering about her day. We're going to be okay, sweet pea, I whispered to the evening air. Different than we planned, but okay. The heaviness in my chest hadn't disappeared entirely. It never would. But it had changed form, becoming more like a cherished weight I carried willingly rather than a burden that threatened to crush me. In the quiet garden as twilight descended, surrounded by the home I'd reclaimed and rebuilt, I finally understood. The opposite of grief isn't happiness. It's purpose. And in honoring Emma's memory by helping others, I'd found mine. If Scarlett's journey from heartbreak to empowerment moved you, hit that subscribe button now. Every story shared is another light in the darkness for someone fighting their own battles. Comment below with your thoughts. Was cutting off the finances justified, or would you have handled it differently? My husband's private jet roared off, leaving me stranded in a stormy airstrip, laughing with his mistress on board. He thought I'd chase him. Instead, I rented my own jet to Dubai. Mid-air, his phone blew up. Leaked affairs, frozen accounts, revoked CO title. Now he's grounded. Permanently. I stood on the rain-soaked tarmac, watching my husband's private jet roar into the storm clouds, his laughter still ringing in my ears as he departed with his mistress on board. In that moment, the jet, purchased with my father's company profits, became the perfect symbol of Robert's betrayal. As the aircraft disappeared into the dark sky, I knew with absolute certainty. He expected me to chase after him to beg for his return. Instead, I pulled out my phone to charter my own flight to Dubai. I had everything I needed to ground him, permanently. But my story didn't start here. It began 6 months earlier with my father's death and an inheritance that would change everything. The rain had pelted against the window of my father's hospital room as I clutched his hand for the last time. His fingers, once strong enough to build Hartwell Foods from nothing but a small sandwich shop into a regional powerhouse, now felt fragile in mine. The monitor flatlined, and just like that, I became both an orphan and the unexpected CEO of a multi-million-dollar company at 34. Miss Hartwell, the hospital chaplain said gently, would you like a moment alone? I nodded, unable to speak through the knot in my throat. Dad had always told me I'd inherit the business someday, but someday was supposed to be decades from now, not after a sudden heart attack took him at 62. The first week after Dad's funeral passed in a blur of black clothes and casseroles. Robert, my husband of 8 years, handled everything. The funeral arrangements, the endless stream of visitors, even making sure I ate. You don't need to worry about anything right now, he whispered, holding me each night as I cried myself to sleep. I've got you. When Dad's attorney, Mr. Greenberg, called about the will reading, Robert took the day off from his accounting job to come with me. I gripped his hand under the conference table as Mr. Greenberg adjusted his glasses and began reading the document that would change everything. To my daughter, Sarah Elizabeth Hartwell, I leave my entire estate, including 100% ownership of Hartwell Foods Incorporated. Mr. Greenberg paused to look at me over his glasses. Your father was very specific that the company should pass to you alone. I felt Robert's hand tighten slightly around mine. Dad had always been fond of Robert, but he'd never offered him a position at the company despite Robert's not-so-subtle hints about wanting to leave his accounting firm. The company needs fresh blood, Dad would say, but family businesses need clear leadership. The weeks that followed were a crash course in food industry management. I'd worked summers at Hartwell Foods during college and had been handling marketing for the past 5 years, but suddenly I was responsible for everything. Supply chains, distribution contracts, personnel issues, and financial decisions that affected the livelihoods of over 200 employees. You look exhausted, Robert said one night, massaging my shoulders as I reviewed quarterly projections. Why don't you take a break? We could grab dinner at Antonio's like we used to. I leaned into his touch, realizing we hadn't had a proper date night in weeks. That sounds perfect. Just give me 15 minutes to finish this email. Over candlelight and red wine, I felt like myself again for the first time since Dad died. Robert charmed me with stories from his office and made me laugh until my sides hurt. This was the man I'd fallen in love with in graduate school. Supportive, funny, and able to make me forget my worries. Thank you, I said, reaching across the table for his hand. For everything these past months. I couldn't have managed without you. He smiled, but something flickered in his eyes. Happy to help. Though I wish I could do more than just be your shoulder to cry on. I've been thinking, maybe I could help with the company finances? Take some of the burden off you. I hesitated. Robert was brilliant with numbers, but Dad's warning about clear leadership echoed in my mind. Let me think about it, I said gently. Right now, I'm still figuring things out myself. As spring turned to summer, I slowly found my footing at Hartwell Foods. The company had been Dad's life's work, and I was determined to honor his legacy. We launched a new line of organic sauces that had been Dad's pet project before he died, and sales exceeded our projections by 30%. We should celebrate, Robert suggested when I shared the good news. This calls for champagne. That night, as we toasted to success, I noticed how genuinely happy Robert seemed for me. He'd been my rock throughout this transition, never complaining when I worked late or brought spreadsheets to bed. In that moment, I made a decision. Robert's 40th birthday was approaching in August, and I wanted to do something meaningful. Something that showed him how much his support meant to me. After consulting with Mr. Greenberg about the legalities, I decided to gift Robert half of my shares in Hartwell Foods. Are you certain about this, Ms. Hartwell? Mr. Greenberg asked, peering at me with concern. Your father was quite adamant about keeping ownership within the direct bloodline. Dad didn't know how essential Robert would become, I insisted. Besides, we're family too. Mr. Greenberg prepared the paperwork with reluctance, and I planned an intimate birthday dinner at home to present my gift. I spent the day cooking Robert's favorites, beef Wellington with truffle mashed potatoes and chocolate soufflé, and set the dining room table with our best china. What's all this? Robert asked when he came home, eyes widening at the candlelit setup. Happy birthday, I said, kissing him. I wanted tonight to be special. After dinner, I handed him a small box containing a vintage watch I'd found at an antique store. He admired it with appropriate enthusiasm, but I could tell he'd expected something different. That's when I pulled out the leather portfolio containing the share certificates. There's one more thing, I said nervously. Something to show you how much your support has meant during this difficult time. I placed the portfolio in his hands. I want us to be partners in everything, including Dad's company. Robert opened the portfolio slowly, his expression shifting from curiosity to disbelief as he realized what he was holding. 50% of Hartwell Foods? He whispered, looking up at me. Sarah, are you serious? Completely, I smiled. You've been my rock. I couldn't think of anyone better to share this with. He surged forward to embrace me, lifting me slightly off the ground in his enthusiasm. You won't regret this, he promised, eyes shining with what I took for gratitude. We're going to take Hartwell Foods to places your father never dreamed of. The change was subtle at first. Robert started coming to the office with me, sitting in on meetings, offering suggestions. The staff seemed to like him. He remembered everyone's names, brought donuts on Fridays, and stayed late to help solve problems. Your husband's quite the charmer, Rita, my assistant who'd worked for Dad for 20 years, observed one afternoon. He's always been good with people, I agreed, watching through my office window as Robert chatted animatedly with our sales team. Looking back, I should have noticed the warning signs. The way Robert began scheduling meetings without consulting me. How he started using I instead of we when discussing company decisions. The subtle shift in how staff increasingly went to him with questions rather than me. One evening, I overheard him on the phone in his home office, door slightly ajar. Don't worry about Sarah, he was saying in a low voice. She's still dealing with her grief. Just send the proposal directly to me and I'll make sure it gets approved. I froze, hand raised to knock. Who was he talking to? And why would they bypass me on a proposal? Before I could process this, Robert continued, the acquisition looks promising. With her father gone, there's nobody left who remembers the old handshake agreements. We can move forward without any complications. My chest tightened. Acquisition? What acquisition? I quietly backed away from the door, mind racing. That night, I lay awake beside him, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. Dad's voice seemed to whisper in my ear, "Family businesses need clear leadership." But Robert was family, my husband, my partner, my support system. Surely I was overthinking this. Yet as I watched him sleep peacefully beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us, like the first tremor before an earthquake that would eventually leave me stranded on that rainy airstrip, watching my husband fly away with another woman. The next morning I convinced myself I was overreacting. Robert had always been ambitious. It was one of the qualities that had attracted me to him in the first place. His drive complemented my creativity, and together we made a good team. At least, that's what I told myself as I dressed for work, carefully selecting a navy pantsuit that Dad had always said gave me an air of authority. "Ready to go, babe?" Robert called from downstairs. He'd started driving us to work together, another small change that had seemed thoughtful at first. Now I wondered if it was just another way to keep tabs on my movements. "Coming," I replied, taking a deep breath before heading downstairs. The subtle power shift at Hartwell Foods continued over the following weeks. Robert had converted a storage room into his own office, directly across from mine, with glass walls that allowed him to monitor my meetings. He'd begun hiring new people without consulting me, including a striking marketing director named Vanessa Powell. "Vanessa comes highly recommended," Robert explained when I questioned him about it. "She worked wonders at Meridian Foods. Their market share doubled under her strategies." His hand rested possessively on Vanessa's shoulder a beat too long. "I'm sure she's very talented," I replied, extending my hand. "Welcome to Hartwell Foods, Vanessa. I look forward to reviewing your marketing proposals." "Oh, Robert and I have already drafted the Q4 campaign," Vanessa responded with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "He approved everything yesterday." I maintained my professional smile while feeling a knot form in my stomach. "I see. Well, I'd still appreciate being kept in the loop on all major campaigns. This is still my father's company." "Our company," Robert corrected with a tight smile. "And of course we'll keep you informed." That evening over dinner I tried to broach the subject. "Robert, I felt blindsided today about the marketing plans. We need to make these decisions together." "Sarah," he sighed, setting down his fork. "You've been so stressed lately. I'm just trying to take some pressure off you. Vanessa has brilliant ideas, and I didn't want to bother you with routine approvals." "Routine approvals?" "The Q4 marketing campaign is our biggest push of the year." I struggled to keep my voice level. Dad always said marketing was the heartbeat of the company. "Your father ran things his way. We need to evolve." Robert's voice took on a patronizing tone I'd never heard before. "Markets change, competition increases. We can't rely on outdated thinking anymore." The words stung like a slap. Dad had built Hartwell Foods through innovation and personal connections with clients. His approach wasn't outdated. It was the foundation of our success. Robert must have seen the hurt in my eyes because his tone softened. "I'm sorry, that came out wrong. I just meant that together we can build on your father's legacy, make it even stronger." He reached for my hand. "Trust me, Sarah. This is what's best for the company." I nodded, swallowing my objections. But that night I pulled out the company bylaws, reading until my eyes burned. As equal shareholders, Robert couldn't make unilateral decisions without my signature on major changes, at least in theory. In practice, he seemed to be finding ways around every safeguard. The following Tuesday I arrived at the office early to find the conference room doors closed, voices murmuring inside. Through the frosted glass I could make out Robert's silhouette alongside several board members and Vanessa. "Excuse me," I said, pushing open the door. The conversation halted abruptly. "What's going on?" "Just a quick strategy meeting," Robert explained smoothly. "Didn't want to wake you this morning. You were sleeping so soundly." "A strategy meeting that the CEO wasn't invited to?" I asked, looking around the table. Several board members, men who'd played golf with my father for decades, couldn't meet my eyes. "It was impromptu," Vanessa offered, her manicured fingers tapping a folder protectively. "We were just discussing preliminary ideas for the expansion." "What expansion?" The words came out sharper than I intended. An uncomfortable silence settled over the room before Robert stood. "Let's talk in your office," he suggested, guiding me by the elbow like a child having a tantrum. Once the door closed behind us, his friendly demeanor evaporated. "You're embarrassing yourself, Sarah," he hissed. "These people need to see strong leadership, not emotional outbursts." "Emotional? You're holding secret meetings about major company decisions without me." "It wasn't secret. It was preliminary. We're exploring acquisition opportunities in the Southwest. I was going to brief you once we had concrete numbers." "That's not how this works, Robert. We make those decisions together." His expression softened, but his eyes remained cold. "You're right. I apologize. I've been pushing too hard." He checked his watch. "Let me make it up to you. Dinner tonight at Le Bernardin? We can talk through everything properly." I wanted to refuse, to demand answers immediately, but several employees were watching through the glass walls. "Fine. Dinner." But dinner never happened. At 6:30, Robert texted that he was caught in an emergency meeting with potential investors. When I called the restaurant to cancel, they had no record of our reservation. Our wedding anniversary the following week passed without acknowledgement. Robert claimed he'd been caught up in work and promised to make it up to me. Our favorite weekend traditions, Saturday morning hikes, Sunday brunches, gradually disappeared as he scheduled business meetings or golf outings with new clients. Home became an empty shell. We occupied the same space but lived increasingly separate lives. I'd wake to find his side of the bed untouched, a text explaining he'd crashed in his office after a late night. The few times we did share dinner, his phone buzzed constantly with urgent messages he needed to address. "I signed the Henderson contract today," I mentioned one evening, breaking the silence between us. It was a significant deal I'd been working on for months, one that would have made Dad proud. "That's nice," Robert replied absently, thumbs flying over his phone screen. "Vanessa and I closed with Westmont Foods. They're considering acquiring our new sauce line for national distribution." My fork clattered against the plate. "Westmont Foods. They're our biggest competitor." Robert finally looked up. "Not anymore. Now they're our biggest opportunity for growth. Dad would never have partnered with Westmont. They undercut small businesses and use inferior ingredients." "Your father isn't running this company anymore," Robert snapped. The silence that followed was deafening. In that moment, I saw Robert clearly for the first time since Dad died. A stranger wearing my husband's face. Later that week, I was searching for a missing contract in Robert's office when I found a hotel receipt tucked in his desk drawer. 4 nights at the Grand Hyatt. During the week, he claimed to be at a food industry conference in Chicago. The guest name listed: Robert Hartwell and Vanessa Powell. My legs gave out and I sank into his chair, the paper trembling in my hand. A text notification lit up his desktop computer screen. "Can't wait for tonight. V." That evening, I watched him pack his overnight bag. "Another late meeting?" I asked, my voice unnaturally calm. "Strategy session for the Westmont deal," he replied without looking up. "Don't wait up." I nodded, retreating to our bedroom where I curled up on Dad's old armchair, the one piece of furniture I'd insisted on keeping after he died. Wrapped in the familiar smell of worn leather, I finally acknowledged what I'd been denying for months. The company Dad built was slipping through my fingers, along with my marriage. And the worst part was that I had handed Robert the tools to dismantle both. Morning came with a decision. I could either continue pretending everything was fine while my world crumbled around me, or I could fight for what remained of my marriage and my father's legacy. I chose to fight. I waited until Saturday morning when Robert was home, nursing his coffee and scrolling through emails. I placed his phone face down on the table, forcing him to look at me. "We need to talk about Vanessa," I said calmly. His expression flickered between surprise and anger before settling on something carefully neutral. "What about her?" "I found the hotel receipt, Robert. 4 nights at the Grand Hyatt with her while you were supposedly at a conference in Chicago." He didn't deny it immediately, which somehow hurt more than any lie could have. "It's not what you think," he finally said, rubbing his temples. "We were meeting with Westmont executives. The company booked our rooms. On the same reservation? With one room key." My voice remained steady even as tears threatened. Robert's shoulders slumped. "It happened once, Sarah. I was stressed about the merger negotiations, had too much to drink. It was a mistake. Once." I pushed the text notification I'd screenshot across the table. He stared at it, then at me, calculation replacing remorse in his eyes. What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? Fine, I'm sorry. I want more than empty words, Robert. I want my husband back. The man who held me through Dad's funeral, who promised to stand by me through everything. Something genuine flickered in his eyes, a brief glimpse of the man I'd married. I don't know what's happened to me, he whispered. The company, the power, it's changed me. Then let's fix it. Together, I reached for his hand. We could try counseling. His fingers tightened around mine. For us. For what we had. Dr. Jensen's office became our Tuesday evening routine for the next month. In that neutral space with its calming blue walls and soft lighting, Robert seemed to transform back into the man I'd fallen in love with. Attentive, remorseful, committed to rebuilding our marriage. I've ended things with Vanessa, he told me after our third session. Completely. I've even reassigned her to our Minneapolis office. I wanted to believe him, needed to believe him. Thank you, I said. That means a lot. For 2 weeks things improved. Robert came home on time. We cooked dinner together, watched movies, cuddled on the couch, even resumed our Sunday brunches at our favorite cafe. At work, he included me in meetings, asked for my input on decisions, and stopped contradicting me in front of staff. Maybe we're turning a corner, I told Rita one afternoon as she dropped off quarterly reports. She smiled, but her eyes held reservation. I hope so, Mrs. Hartwell. I should have heeded the warning in her tone. The following Monday, I arrived at work to find Vanessa in Robert's office, their heads bent close together over spreadsheets. When I entered, they jumped apart like guilty teenagers. I thought she was transferred to Minneapolis, I said after Vanessa left. The transition is taking longer than expected, Robert explained smoothly. She needs to train her replacement properly. That night, I confronted him again. You promised, Robert. In counseling, you promised you'd ended it. And I have. This is purely professional. The Westmont deal is complex. We need her expertise. Then why the secrecy? Why the guilty looks? Why lie about transferring her? I didn't lie. The transfer is happening, just not overnight. He threw up his hands. This is exactly why I didn't tell you. You overreact to everything. Overreact? You're having an affair with a woman you hired behind my back, making business decisions without me, and I'm overreacting? He stepped closer, voice dropping dangerously. You have no proof of any affair. And if I've taken control of some decisions, it's because someone needs to think about the business instead of clinging to Daddy's outdated methods. The cruelty of his words left me speechless. This wasn't the man who'd held me while I grieved. This was someone else entirely, someone cold and calculating who saw my pain as weakness. Despite everything, I couldn't give up. 8 years of marriage, the memory of what we once had, the dream of what we could be again. It all kept me fighting. We returned to Dr. Jensen, where Robert once again transformed into the contrite husband. I said terrible things, he admitted in session. Sarah's father was a brilliant businessman, and I was wrong to dismiss his legacy. Dr. Jensen nodded. Robert, can you understand why Sarah might find it difficult to trust your sincerity given the pattern of promises followed by disappointments? I do, he said, looking directly at me. And I want to prove myself. What if we plan something special for the company's anniversary next month? A celebration of your father's vision and your leadership. The gesture seemed so perfect, so thoughtful that I allowed hope to bloom again. I'd like that, I said softly. Robert threw himself into planning the company's 35th anniversary celebration. He reserved the grand ballroom at the Hilton, hired Dad's favorite jazz quartet, and ordered a cake modeled after our original storefront. Every detail showed attention and care. The night of the event, I wore a midnight blue gown that had been my mother's favorite, her pearl necklace cool against my skin. Robert complimented me sincerely, his hand warm at the small of my back as we greeted employees and board members. Everything was perfect until the speeches began. Robert took the stage first, champagne flute raised high. 35 years ago, Frank Hartwell started this company with nothing but determination and a signature sauce recipe, he began. The crowd applauded warmly. And today we honor that legacy by looking forward. Which is why I'm thrilled to announce that Hartwell Foods will be merging with Westmont Industries. Gasps rippled through the room. My champagne glass nearly slipped from my fingers. This partnership, Robert continued, will take us national then global. And to facilitate this transition, I'm proud to announce our new executive team. I stood frozen as he introduced Vanessa as Executive Vice President and 3 Westmont executives as new board members. My name wasn't mentioned once. In one calculated move, Robert had announced a merger I hadn't approved and restructured the company without my consent. When he finally returned to my side, his smile was triumphant. "Surprised," he whispered. "How could you?" My voice barely carried over the applause. "The papers are already filed. Board approved it this morning in a special session." He clinked his glass against mine. "Smile, Sarah. We're celebrating." That night, after mechanical goodbyes to confused employees, I locked myself in Dad's home office. With shaking hands, I logged into the company's financial system, accessing reports Robert thought I never reviewed. What I found confirmed my worst fears. Robert had been systematically moving company assets into new accounts where I wasn't a signatory. Small transfers at first, growing bolder over time. Most troubling was a newly formed offshore entity that now owned our patents and trademarks, including Dad's original sauce recipes. On paper, Hartwell Foods was becoming an empty shell, its value stripped away piece by piece. The realization struck me with physical force. Robert wasn't just betraying our marriage. He was orchestrating my complete removal from the company, ensuring that when he finally discarded me, I'd be left with nothing of Dad's legacy. Tears blurred my vision, but beneath the pain, something else crystallized. A cold, clear determination. This wasn't just about saving my marriage anymore. Some things shouldn't, be saved. This was about survival. I spent the night compiling evidence, downloading financial records, taking screenshots of suspicious transactions, and copying emails I'd been blind to before. By dawn, I had assembled enough evidence to show that Robert had been systematically looting the company. But confronting him with it would only warn him, giving him time to cover his tracks or accelerate his plans. I needed legal advice, but I couldn't risk using our family attorney who had clearly sided with Robert during the merger announcement. I remembered Elena Vasquez, a fierce corporate lawyer Mom had befriended years ago. I made an appointment for later that week, careful to use my personal email rather than my company account. Meanwhile, Robert seemed energized by his public coup at the anniversary party. He whistled around the house, treated me with exaggerated courtesy, and even brought home flowers one evening. "We should take a trip," he announced over dinner 3 days after the party. "Just the 2 of us." Goodbye. The Westmont team is hosting a global food expo there next week, but we could extend it, make it a second honeymoon of sorts. I almost choked on my wine. Dubai? Now. Think about it. 5-star hotels, private beaches, shopping. You've always wanted to see the Burj Khalifa. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Plus, it would show a united front to our new partners. My mind raced. Was this an olive branch or something more sinister? The timing was suspicious, coming right when I discovered the financial irregularities. Then again, Dubai would give me access to Robert's new business partners. I could gather more information, maybe even evidence of his schemes. "That sounds nice," I said carefully. "When would we leave?" "Friday morning. The company jet will take us to the private airstrip outside the city, then straight to Dubai." He reached for my hand. "I know things have been strained. This could be good for us." I smiled and squeezed his hand, while my mind calculated frantically. This accelerated my timeline. I needed to see Elena immediately. "I'd like that," I lied. The next morning, I claimed a dentist appointment and slipped away to meet Elena at her downtown office. Her handshake was firm, her eyes sharp as she reviewed the documents I'd brought. "This is textbook corporate theft," she said finally, removing her reading glasses. "He's systematically stripping assets while positioning for a full takeover. The merger announcement without proper shareholder approval, meaning you, is particularly telling." "What can I do?" I asked. "Your father built in some protections when he established the company. Equal shares don't necessarily mean equal power." She tapped a clause in the original incorporation papers. "There's a moral conduct provision here. With evidence of financial impropriety, you could potentially trigger a review that would return full control to you." "How quickly could that happen?" "If we file emergency motions? Days, maybe a week." She frowned. "Why?" We're leaving for Dubai on Friday. A second honeymoon he suddenly planned after I started looking into the company finances. Elena's expression darkened. That timing concerns me. Is there any way you can delay the trip? If I refuse to go, he'll know something's wrong. Then go, but be extremely careful. Keep gathering evidence, but don't confront him until we have everything filed and ready. And Sarah, she hesitated, make sure your passport stays with you at all times. The warning sent a chill through me. What exactly did Elena think Robert was capable of? Friday morning arrived with ominous dark clouds gathering on the horizon. Robert seemed unusually attentive, carrying my suitcase to the car, holding doors open, asking if I wanted coffee before we headed to the airstrip. The weather report mentions possible thunderstorms, I noted as we drove. Will that affect the flight? We'll get out before the worst hits, he assured me, one hand resting on my knee. The gesture felt possessive rather than affectionate. The private airstrip was small. A single runway, a modest terminal building, and a few hangars. Our company jet waited on the tarmac, its steps already lowered, the pilot doing final checks. The first fat raindrops began to fall as we pulled up. Go ahead and board, Robert said, checking his phone. I need to make a quick call. I nodded and stepped out into the increasing rain, pulling my light jacket tighter. The wind whipped my hair as I approached the jet, my wheelie bag bumping over the uneven pavement. Before climbing the steps, I glanced back toward Robert, still sitting in the car. That's when I saw another vehicle approaching. A sleek black sedan that pulled up directly behind our car. The back door opened and Vanessa emerged, her red dress vivid against the darkening sky, an overnight bag in hand. She hurried to our car, slipping into the passenger seat beside Robert. I froze on the first step of the jet stairs. Through the car's windshield I could see them laughing together, her hand reaching up to stroke his face. Then Robert looked toward the jet, saw me watching, and his smile faded. He said something to Vanessa, then got out of the car, leaving her inside. Sarah, he called, jogging toward me as the rain intensified. I was just telling Vanessa goodbye. She brought some contracts I needed to sign before we left. The lie was so blatant, so insulting that I couldn't even respond. I just stared at him, rain streaming down my face, mingling with tears I refused to acknowledge. Go on board, he urged, taking my elbow. You're getting soaked. I pulled away from his grasp. She's coming with us, isn't she? His face hardened. The Dubai team requested her presence for the marketing presentations. It's business, Sarah. In a red dress. With an overnight bag. My voice was surprisingly steady. Stop lying, Robert. At least have the decency to tell me the truth. Lightning cracked across the sky, followed by a rumble of thunder. The rain was coming down in sheets now. Fine, he snapped. Yes, Vanessa's coming. The truth is, she understands this business better than you ever will. She supports my vision instead of clinging to the past. Our marriage vows, were those just the past too? I asked. Robert stepped closer, lowering his voice, though the rain and thunder would have drowned it out anyway. Look, I was trying to be kind. Make this easy. We can still present a united front in Dubai, settle everything quietly afterward. Nobody needs to know the details. You're asking me to fly across the world and pretend my marriage isn't over while you carry on with your mistress down the hall? Don't be dramatic. It's a business decision like everything else. He glanced back toward the car where Vanessa waited. You can either get on that plane and maintain some dignity, or you can throw a fit and confirm what everyone already thinks, that you're too emotional for business. His words struck like physical blows. This was his plan, to humiliate me further, to use this trip to showcase my replacement both in the company and in his life. Sarah. A voice called from the terminal building. I turned to see Mike Davis, the airstrip manager who'd known my father, beckoning from the doorway. Storm's getting worse. You folks need to decide if you're flying out or waiting it out. Robert turned toward the car. We're leaving now, he called back, then looked at me. Last chance, Sarah. On or off? In that moment, everything crystallized. I stepped back from the jet stairs. I'll pass. Robert's face darkened. You're making a mistake. No, I said quietly. I already made my mistake. When I trusted you. He shook his head in disgust, then jogged back to the car. Within minutes, Vanessa had transferred to the jet, her red dress flashing like a warning signal as she climbed the stairs. Robert followed without a backward glance. The jet door closed and I stood in the pouring rain, watching as the aircraft taxied down the runway and took off into the stormy sky, carrying my husband and his mistress toward Dubai. Mrs. Hartwell? Mike approached, holding an umbrella over my head. Let's get you inside out of this weather. The terminal building was warm and dry, the smell of coffee drifting from Mike's office. He handed me a towel and a steaming mug, concern etched on his weathered face. Frank would have my hide if I let his little girl catch pneumonia, he said gruffly. You okay? The simple kindness broke something in me and tears came in earnest now. Not really, I admitted. But I will be. Mike awkwardly patted my shoulder. Your dad was the best man I knew. Straight shooter, fair dealer. He hesitated. Never much cared for your husband if you don't mind my saying so. A surprised laugh escaped through my tears. Right now, I don't much care for him either. What can I do to help? Mike asked. Need a ride back to the city? I thought about Robert and Vanessa flying toward Dubai, confident they'd left me stranded and humiliated. They expected me to slink home defeated. To wait passively while Robert completed his takeover of the company in my life. Actually, I said slowly, an idea forming, do you know anyone who could arrange a private charter? I need to get to Dubai. Mike's eyebrows rose, but he nodded. I've got connections at Regional Express. They've got a Gulfstream that could make that trip. He studied my face. This about getting even? No, I said, pulling out my phone. This is about getting what's mine. Mike's connections worked faster than I'd expected. Within an hour, a sleek Gulfstream G650 was being prepared for departure while I placed an urgent call to Elena. I need you on this flight with me, I told her when she answered. Robert's on his way to Dubai with his mistress. I'm following on a chartered jet. Pause. Sarah, are you sure about this? Flying halfway around the world in your emotional state. I've never been more clear-headed, I interrupted. But I need legal counsel and I trust you. I'll double your usual retainer. 3 hours later, Elena and I settled into the plush leather seats of the private jet. The storm had passed, leaving clear skies for takeoff. As we climbed through the clouds, I felt a strange calm replace the turbulent emotions of the past weeks. This wasn't about chasing Robert or saving my marriage anymore. This was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine. We have approximately 14 hours before we land in Dubai, Elena said, spreading documents across the table between us. Robert will have about a 5-hour head start. Good, I nodded. That gives him time to get comfortable, to think he's won. Elena smiled approvingly. I've been making calls. Judge Winters, she played golf with your father, has agreed to review our emergency motion immediately. If she agrees, and I believe she will, you'll have temporary controlling interest in Hartwell Foods by the time we land. What about the offshore accounts? I asked. The trademarks he transferred? That's where this gets interesting. Elena pulled out her laptop. Your father was more careful than Robert realized. The operating agreement has a provision that any IP transfer requires approval from all original shareholders or their direct heirs. Since you inherited directly from your father, and these transfers happened after his death without your explicit consent, they're invalid, I finished, a spark of hope igniting. Potentially. But we need evidence that you didn't approve them. I pointed to my carry-on. I've downloaded every email, every document I've signed since Dad died. Nothing about IP transfers. For the next 3 hours we combed through paperwork, building our case piece by piece. Elena drafted legal motions while I compiled a chronology of Robert's deceptions. The pattern was damning. Each step calculated to marginalize me while he consolidated power. There's one more thing we should address, Elena said as we prepared to submit the emergency filing electronically. Your marriage. My hand paused over the keyboard. Despite everything, a pang of grief hit me. What about it? From a strategic standpoint, you should consider filing for divorce immediately. It strengthens your position regarding company control and prevents Robert from claiming marital assets if the court rules in your favor. The word divorce hung in the air. 8 years of marriage, ending with a legal document filed from 40,000 feet above the Atlantic. Yet the decision felt surprisingly easy. Draft the papers, I said quietly. He made his choice at that airstrip. With our legal documents filed, Elena suggested I rest, but sleep was impossible. Instead, I began the next phase of our plan, gathering evidence of Robert's affair for potential breach of the moral conduct provision. I'd already saved screenshots of text messages glimpsed on his phone and photos taken at company events that showed his inappropriate closeness with Vanessa. But I needed more evidence of their collusion in company decisions, proof that their relationship had affected business operations. I remembered Robert often working on his personal laptop, which synchronized to our home cloud storage. Had he been careless enough to leave a trail there? I logged in remotely and found a treasure trove of evidence. Emails between Robert and Vanessa dating back months before he hired her. Budget reallocations diverting funds from my marketing department to projects they controlled. Draft agreements for the Westmont merger with sections highlighting how to minimize my role. Most damning was a PowerPoint presentation titled Hartwell Restructuring with a slide labeled Sarah Exit Strategy. It detailed 3 options: buy out my shares at a fraction of their worth, create enough corporate pressure that I would resign voluntarily, or, the option marked as preferred, use the Dubai trip to negotiate a private separation agreement, where I would cede control to avoid public embarrassment. My hands trembled as I downloaded everything, forwarding copies to Elena and to a secure email account I'd created. I was just closing the laptop when Elena returned from making calls in the private cabin section. "We have news," she announced, her expression triumphant. "Judge Winters has granted our emergency motion. Effective immediately, you have controlling interest in Hartwell Foods pending a full hearing." "What does that mean practically?" I asked. "It means you can rescind any unauthorized decisions including the Westmont merger announcement. And you can restrict access to company accounts." She handed me a sheaf of papers. "These need your signature. Then we contact the bank." By hour 10 of our flight, I had signed documents freezing the company's primary accounts, restricting Robert's access to corporate systems, and initiating a formal review of all transactions made without proper authorization over the past 6 months. Each signature felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. "We should prepare a public statement," Elena suggested as we entered the final stretch of our journey. "Something measured but firm that establishes your authority without airing all the dirty laundry." I nodded, thinking of the loyal employees who had looked confused at the anniversary party. They deserved to know that Hartwell Foods wasn't being sold off to the highest bidder, that my father's legacy would continue. As I drafted the statement, my phone pinged with an email notification. Our IT director, responding to Elena's request, had tracked login activity on Robert's company accounts. He was currently accessing financial records from his hotel in Dubai, likely preparing for meetings with Westmont executives. "He has no idea what's coming," I murmured. "That's the advantage of being underestimated," Elena replied with a smile. The last hour of the flight, I changed from my travel clothes into a sharp charcoal suit, one my father had always said made me look boardroom ready. I touched the pearl necklace at my throat, my mother's favorite, drawing strength from these small connections to my parents. "You look formidable," Elena observed. "I feel it," I realized, surprised by the truth of it. Somewhere over the Atlantic, the hurt and betrayed wife had been replaced by something stronger. A woman who knew her worth and was prepared to fight for what was hers. As we began our descent into Dubai, I made one final call, to Rita, my assistant, who had been quietly gathering information at my request. "Everything's set," she confirmed. "Security has been notified about restricted access to the systems. The board members will receive your statement at exactly 9 a.m. Dubai time. And I've contacted the conference organizers. They're adjusting the speaker schedule as you requested." "Thank you, Rita. I couldn't have done this without you. Your father would be proud," she said softly before hanging up. The Dubai skyline appeared through the window, the Burj Khalifa towering over the desert city. Robert had been right about one thing: I had always wanted to see it. Just not like this, not under these circumstances. Or perhaps exactly like this, on my terms, with my dignity intact, ready to take back what was mine. As the wheels touched down, my phone lit up with a text from the Hartwell Foods security team. Robert's access credentials had just been declined at the Westmont preliminary meeting. Soon his banking apps would show frozen accounts. His corporate email would display a lockout message. And waiting in his hotel room inbox would be my statement announcing the immediate termination of merger talks with Westmont and the review of all unauthorized transfers under his brief tenure. I smiled as I imagined his face when he realized what had happened, that I wasn't chasing after him begging for reconciliation. That while he'd been flying to Dubai believing he'd won, I had been executing the checkmate move. Ready? Elena asked as the jet came to a stop. I took a deep breath, feeling a new sense of purpose settle over me. Absolutely. The cabin door opened onto the bright Dubai morning, and I stepped out into the sunshine, leaving behind the shadow of a marriage that had turned toxic. Ahead lay challenge and uncertainty, but also freedom. I was no longer fighting to save what had been lost. I was moving forward, reclaiming what was mine, and building something new from the solid foundation my father had created. For the first time in months, I felt like Frank Hartwell's daughter again. The lobby of the Grand Hyatt Dubai buzzed with activity as I strode through the gleaming marble entrance. The confidence in my step was new, a physical manifestation of the woman I'd become during that 14-hour flight. Elena walked beside me, legal documents tucked into her sleek briefcase, her presence both reassuring and formidable. Mr. and Mrs. Hartwell are in the Westmont meeting in the Al Manzil conference room, the concierge informed us after a quick call. Shall I announce you? No, I replied with a small smile. I'd prefer to surprise my husband. We took the elevator to the third floor, the soft ping at each level matching the steady rhythm of my heartbeat. Not racing with anxiety as it would have days ago, but strong and measured, ready for confrontation. Outside the conference room, I paused to straighten my jacket and touch my mother's pearls once more. Through the frosted glass doors I could make out several figures seated around a long table. Robert's voice carried clearly, confident, almost gloating as he detailed plans for Hartwell Foods' future. With the new distribution channels Westmont provides, we'll phase out the smaller product lines by next quarter. The original recipes can be modernized to appeal to broader markets. I pushed open the door. Every head turned as I entered, followed by Elena. Robert froze mid-sentence, his expression shifting from shock to confusion to carefully controlled anger. Sarah. He recovered quickly, flashing that charming smile that had once made my heart flutter. What a surprise. We weren't expecting you until later. Clearly, I replied, nodding politely to the Westmont executives who looked uncomfortably between us. Vanessa sat beside Robert, her red dress from the airstrip exchanged for a sleek business suit, her hand protectively close to his on the table. Since you're here, let me introduce our partners from Westmont Foods, Robert continued smoothly. We were just discussing the integration timeline. There will be no integration, I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. The merger negotiations with Westmont Foods have been terminated, effective immediately. Silence fell over the room. One of the Westmont executives, their CEO judging by his position at the head of the table, leaned forward. I'm sorry, Mrs. Hartwell, but your husband has already secured board approval for this merger. A board meeting called without proper notice to all shareholders. Elena stepped in, opening her briefcase. In violation of company bylaws. And who might you be? The CEO asked with thinly veiled irritation. Elena Vasquez, legal counsel for Hartwell Foods. She distributed copies of the court order to everyone at the table. As you can see, Judge Winters has granted emergency relief returning controlling interest to Ms. Hartwell pending review of numerous irregularities in recent company decisions. Robert snatched the document, his face darkening as he scanned the contents. This is ridiculous. You can't just. I already have, I said quietly. The company accounts have been frozen. Your access to corporate systems has been revoked. And the board has been notified of your immediate suspension pending investigation into financial improprieties. The room erupted. Westmont executives huddled together, whispering urgently. Vanessa's face had gone pale, her eyes darting between Robert and the exit as though calculating her best escape route. Robert pushed back from the table violently. We need to speak. Privately. I nodded, following him to a small sitting area in the corner of the conference room, still within sight but out of earshot of the others. What the hell do you think you're doing? He hissed, all pretense of civility gone. Exactly what my father would have done, I replied. Protecting what's mine. You'll regret this. I have contracts, agreements in place. Unauthorized agreements. Made without proper approval. I leaned closer. I found your Sarah exit strategy presentation, Robert. Very thorough. particularly the part about using this trip to pressure me into signing away my rights. His expression faltered for just a moment before he regained his composure. We could have done this amicably. Now you're forcing a public battle that will damage the company's reputation. Is that what you want? What I want, I said steadily, is for you to step aside gracefully. Resign your position, agree to the divorce terms Elena has drafted, and walk away. In return, I won't pursue criminal charges for the financial manipulations we've uncovered. You're bluffing, he scoffed. What financial manipulations? I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the evidence I'd compiled. Unauthorized transfers to offshore accounts. Trademark assignments without proper approval. Shall I continue? The forensic accountants will find everything, Robert. As the reality of his situation dawned on him, I saw something I'd never witnessed before. Genuine fear in Robert's eyes. His carefully constructed house of cards was collapsing around him, each card bearing the name of a lie he'd told, a betrayal he'd enacted. You need me, he said finally, his voice less certain. The board trusts me. The Westmont deal can't happen without me. The Westmont deal isn't happening at all, I corrected him. And as for the board, I checked my watch. They should be receiving my detailed report right about now, including evidence of how you've been systematically undermining the company since Dad died. From across the room, I noticed the Westmont CEO ending a phone call, his expression grave as he whispered something to his colleagues. Their postures changed immediately, shoulders stiffening, faces closing. Robert saw it too. What did you do? I protected our company. The way Dad raced me to do. I stood up. Your return flight has been booked for tomorrow morning. First class, commercial. The company jet is no longer at your disposal. You can't just. I can. I have. I turned to walk away, then paused. Oh, and Robert? Your company credit cards have been canceled. You might want to check your personal accounts too. It seems the bank had some concerns about recent unusual activity. I rejoined Elena at the table, leaving Robert standing alone, his carefully cultivated power evaporating in real time. The Westmont CEO cleared his throat awkwardly. Mrs. Hartwell, in light of these developments, I think it's best if we postpone any further discussions. Mr. Chambers, there's nothing to postpone, I replied firmly. Hartwell Foods is not for sale or merger. However, I'd be happy to discuss potential distribution partnerships that don't involve corporate integration. He studied me for a moment, then nodded with what looked like respect. Perhaps we can schedule that conversation for another time. As the Westmont team gathered their materials, Vanessa sidled toward the door, clearly hoping to slip away unnoticed. Ms. Powell, I called, stopping her in her tracks. Human Resources will contact you regarding the termination of your employment. Please ensure all company property is returned before you leave Dubai. She flushed, glancing toward Robert, who stood frozen in place, still processing his fall from power. Without a word, she hurried from the room, loyalty evaporating in the face of consequence. When the last Westmont executive had departed, I turned to Robert. You should know, the locks at the house have been changed. Where am I supposed to go? He demanded, the entitlement in his tone almost laughable now. That's no longer my concern. I gathered my things, prepared to leave him standing alone in the emptying conference room. Sarah, he called as I reached the door. I built that company with you. It's as much mine as yours. I paused, turning to face him one last time. No, Robert. You tried to steal what my father built. There's a difference. I let the truth settle between us. You're grounded, Robert. Permanently. As Elena and I walked through the hotel lobby toward the bright Dubai sunshine, a weight lifted from my shoulders. For the first time since Dad died, I felt truly capable of carrying his legacy forward while creating my own. What now? Elena asked as we stepped outside. I looked up at the impossibly tall Burj Khalifa, stretching toward the sky. Now we rebuilt. My way. 3 days later, I returned to our headquarters, stepping into the familiar lobby with new purpose. Rita greeted me with a warm hug and a stack of messages. The board wants to meet this afternoon. They've reviewed everything and are prepared to ratify your full reinstatement as CEO, she reported. And Mr. Greenberg called twice. Robert signed the divorce papers without contest. He didn't have much choice, I noted, glancing through the glass walls of what had been Robert's office. The maintenance crew was already removing his nameplate. "Your father's office is ready for you," Rita said, following my gaze. "Unless you'd prefer to keep yours?" I considered the question. Dad's corner office represented tradition, stability, legacy. My current space reflected where I'd started in this company, the marketing department that had been my domain before all this began. Have them move my things to Dad's office, I decided. But first, let's call the design team. I think it's time for some updates. Rita smiled knowingly. Honoring tradition while embracing change? Exactly. I touched my mother's pearls, a tangible connection to my past. Dad built something amazing, but now it's my turn to lead. That evening, I stood at the window of the office that had once been my father's and was now irrevocably mine. The view of the city stretched before me, lights beginning to twinkle as dusk settled. On my desk sat a framed photo of Dad at the original Hartwell storefront, his proud smile captured forever. Beside it, I placed a new frame containing the first executive order I'd signed today. The reinstatement of Dad's original sauce recipe with my own subtle enhancement, a blend of traditional and new that represented everything Hartwell Foods would become under my leadership. "Well, Dad," I whispered to the empty room, "I almost lost it all. But I think you'd be proud of how I got it back." The company phone rang and I answered with my new greeting, "Sarah Hartwell, CEO of Hartwell Foods. How may I help you?" The storm had passed, and I was finally flying on my own. My husband is celebrating his new relationship while I'm signing papers to end everything he cares about. He has no clue what he's about to lose. While my husband orders champagne to celebrate his new relationship status on Facebook, I'm signing papers that will leave him sleeping in his Tesla by Monday. Funny thing about that Tesla, I paid for it. Just like I paid for everything else he's about to lose. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank each of you for being part of this incredible journey. If you're enjoying these stories of empowerment, consider subscribing. It's completely free and helps us build this amazing community. Let's dive in. My hand doesn't shake as I sign another document. 15 years of marriage and James still thinks I'm just the pretty face who got lucky with a successful husband. He forgot, or maybe never cared to remember, that before I became Mrs. Wilson I was the youngest partner at Morton Financial. The same firm that handled the offshore accounts he thought he'd hidden so cleverly. "Are you sure about this timing, Mrs. Wilson?" Linda, my lawyer, watches me with a mixture of admiration and concern. "We could wait until..." Look. I turn my phone toward her, showing James's latest Facebook post. The timestamp reads 2 minutes ago. "Living my best life with my soulmate. #new chapter #blessed. The photo shows them at Maison Laurent, the same restaurant where he proposed to me. He's even wearing the Rolex I gave him for our 10th anniversary. The timing, I say, signing another paper with flourish, is perfect. My phone buzzes again. A text from James. "Hey beautiful, don't wait up tonight. Big client meeting running late. Love you." I've saved every text like this from the past 6 months. Each one corresponds perfectly with a credit card charge at hotels, restaurants, jewelry stores. The ones he doesn't know I've traced. The ones that match perfectly with Sarah's Instagram posts, flaunting each spontaneous gift from her married lover. What they don't know is that I've known for months. Every late-night meeting, every business trip, every suspicious charge. I've documented it all. But unlike most scorned wives, I didn't confront him. I didn't throw his clothes on the lawn or key his precious Tesla. Instead, I did what I do best. I followed the money. This one, Linda points to a particular document, will freeze all joint accounts and trigger an automatic audit. Once you sign, there's no going back. I think about this morning how James kissed my cheek before leaving for work, how he promised we'd plan that trip to Bali soon. Meanwhile, I'd already seen the Bali reservations he'd made, not for us but for him and Sarah. Next month at the same resort where we spent our honeymoon. Good, I say, signing my name. That's exactly what I want. My phone lights up with another notification. An Instagram story this time. Sarah showing off a new Cartier bracelet, tagged with "From my love." I screenshot it, noting the date and time. It matches perfectly with a withdrawal from our joint savings account. The one James thinks I never check. The forensic team will start their investigation on Monday, Linda explains, organizing the papers. Given what you've already uncovered, they'll have more than enough to prove he's been embezzling from his own company? I finish for her, pulling up a folder on my phone. Here's every transaction he's tried to hide through that fake consulting firm he set up. The one where Sarah mysteriously became CEO 2 months ago, despite having zero business experience. Linda's eyes widen as she scrolls through the documents. This is incredibly thorough. I had a lot of free evenings, I say dryly. You know, with all his late meetings. As if on cue, my phone buzzes with a group chat notification. Our couple friends planning a dinner next week. James responds immediately. Sorry everyone, I'll be out of town on business. I know about that business trip too. I've seen the tickets to Cabo he booked for him and Sarah. First class, charged to his corporate card. The same corporate card that's about to be flagged for audit. Last one, Linda says, sliding the final paper across the desk. This initiates the full investigation into both personal and corporate accounts. Once you sign this, I don't hesitate. My signature flows across the paper, years of anger and betrayal channeled into each curve and line. As I dot the I's in Wilson, another notification pops up. James, going live on Facebook from what's supposed to be his client meeting. Let them celebrate, I say, standing up and smoothing my dress. The one James bought me last month out of guilt. By Monday morning, they'll have a very different status to update. Linda gathers the papers, her expression both impressed and slightly unnerved. You know, in 15 years of handling divorces, I've never seen anyone quite as prepared. I suggest picking up my bag. Strategic? Or maybe just tired of being underestimated. As I walk out of the office, my phone buzzes one last time. James, sending his nightly check-in. Miss you, beautiful. Can't wait to come home to you. I smile, typing back. Sleep well, honey. Monday's going to be interesting. He'll think it's just another loving message from his unsuspecting wife. But then again, he always did underestimate me. That's about to become his most expensive mistake. The morning after signing those initial papers, I dress with extra care. Chanel suit, Louboutin heels, his favorite pearl necklace. The armor of a woman who has everything under control. The mirror reflects exactly what James expects to see. His perfectly polished wife, none the wiser about his secret life. Good morning, sweetheart, I call out as he stumbles into the kitchen, hungover from last night's client meeting. I made your favorite breakfast. He kisses my cheek, reeking of expensive whiskey and guilt. You're too good to me, babe. If only you knew, I think, sliding his coffee across the counter. The same counter where I'd sat until 2 a.m. last night, on a video call with my old colleague Mark from Morton Financial. Mark, who now heads their forensic accounting department. Mark, who nearly choked on his own coffee when I showed him what I'd found in James's supposedly secure cloud drive. Another early meeting? I ask innocently, watching him check his phone. His lock screen is still our vacation photo from last summer. His background, I know, is Sarah. I've seen it reflected in his car window when he texts her. Yeah, the Thompson deal is killing me. He runs a hand through his hair, distracted. The Thompson deal that doesn't exist. I've already checked. His firm hasn't handled anything for Thompson Industries in over a year. Don't work too hard, I say, squeezing his shoulder. He doesn't notice that I'm taking a photo of his phone screen in the reflection of our kitchen window, capturing Sarah's message about their lunch plans. After he leaves, I transform our home office into my war room. Spreadsheets replace family photos on the walls. Bank statements and property records cover every surface. My friend Rachel, a corporate lawyer I've known since college, sits cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by documents. Jesus Christ, she mutters, holding up a paper. Did he really think he could hide a shell company this obvious? In the Caymans? I laugh, but there's no humor in it. He registered it under our dog's name. Our dead dog. Rachel shakes her head, adding the paper to our growing evidence pile. Men like him always think they're the smartest person in the room. That's because they never bother looking around the room, I reply, pulling up another document on my laptop. Look at this. Every time he meets Sarah for one of their little dates, he files it as a business expense. $300 bottles of wine with a woman who's supposedly just a junior consultant? My phone buzzes. A group text from our friend Lisa about her upcoming dinner party. James responds immediately with another excuse. Sarah, I noticed, declines the invitation too. They're getting careless, confident. It would almost be funny if it weren't so perfectly aligned with my timeline. Have you talked to Diana yet? Rachel asks, referring to our friend who heads the SEC's forensic team. I nod, pulling up an encrypted email. She's ready. The moment we file on Monday, she'll coincidentally launch a routine audit of his firm. The same audit that will discover Sarah's consulting company has been receiving suspicious payments since before it legally existed. My phone lights up with James's face, his daily check-in call. I answer with practiced cheerfulness, listening to him lie about his lunch meeting while I stare at the hotel receipt from his actual location. Miss you too, honey, I say, watching Rachel roll her eyes. Don't forget we have dinner with the Hendersons tonight. He pauses. I can practically hear him texting Sarah to reschedule. Of course, babe. Wouldn't miss it. After hanging up, I turn to Rachel. He'll cancel in about 3 hours. Emergency client meeting. How can you be so sure? I pull up Sarah's Instagram story from this morning. A cryptic post about its special surprise tonight. Because I know their routine better than they do. The rest of the day is a carefully choreographed dance. I attend my regular board meetings, make appearances at my usual lunch spots, even get my nails done at the salon where James's secretary gets hers. Everything normal. Everything routine. No one would suspect that in my briefcase, I'm carrying documents that will dismantle a decade of James's careful deceptions. Right on schedule at 3:47 p.m. James texts, "Baby, I'm so sorry. Henderson dinner might have to rain check. Massive crisis with the Beijing account." I respond with just the right amount of disappointment and understanding. The Beijing account has been closed for months. Another fact he doesn't know I know. Look what just came in, Rachel says, holding up her phone. Sarah's posted a photo of champagne glasses at sunset. The location tag is accidentally visible. The rooftop bar where James first kissed me. Perfect, I say, adding the screenshot to our collection. That receipt will match beautifully with the emergency business dinner he's about to charge to the corporate card. As evening falls, I sit in our perfectly appointed living room, surrounded by evidence of James's double life and my own careful documentation. Every lie, every secret meeting, every hidden transaction. All of it meticulously catalogued and cross-referenced. My phone buzzes with another Instagram notification. Sarah, wearing a new dress that costs more than her monthly consulting fee. Captioned with a single heart emoji. I save it to the folder marked Monday and pour myself another glass of wine. Let them have their romantic evening. Let them think they're the clever ones hiding their great love story from the naive wife. I've spent months building this facade of ignorance, and in 2 days, I'll have the pleasure of watching it shatter, along with everything else they thought they could take from me. Sunday morning. The last peaceful Sunday James will ever have, though he doesn't know it yet. I watch him sleep, his face relaxed in blissful ignorance. His phone buzzes on the nightstand, Sarah's morning text right on schedule. I've memorized their patterns better than they have. While he showers, I begin my final preparations. My laptop hums quietly as I log into accounts he doesn't know exist. Accounts I've spent months preparing, each one a carefully positioned piece on my chessboard. The first transfer goes through silently. $2.3 million moved from our joint savings to my new secure account. Money I'd earned and saved before we even met, which he'd slowly merged into our finances. Just going for a quick round of golf, babe. James calls out, already heading for the door. I know he's meeting Sarah at their usual hotel. The one that bills itself as a business center on credit card statements. Have fun, honey. I reply, not looking up from my laptop as I initiate another transfer. Don't forget we have brunch with my parents next weekend. Pause. Of course, wouldn't miss it. Another lie, he's already booked flights to Aspen with Sarah for those dates. I have the receipts literally. Once he's gone, my real work begins. Linda arrives first, bringing fresh coffee and a stack of final documents. Rachel follows with her laptop and legal files. Mark dials in virtually, his forensic accounting expertise crucial for these last steps. Everything's in position, Linda says, spreading papers across our dining room table. The same table where James and I renewed our vows last year. The moment the courts open tomorrow morning, it all goes into motion. I pull up my masterpiece on the screen, a flowchart that would make military strategists proud. Every account, every asset, every shell company he thought was hidden. Red lines connecting his business meetings with hotel charges. Blue lines tracking money flowing into Sarah's fake consulting firm. green lines marking every lie documented with timestamps and evidence. The SEC team is ready, Rachel confirms, checking her phone. Diana says they'll randomly select his firm for audit exactly 1 hour after the divorce papers are filed. Mark's voice crackles through the speaker. I've identified 7 more accounts he tried to hide through that Cayman Islands setup. Amateur hour, really. He used variations of his mother's maiden name for all of them. What about the offshore transfers? I ask, pulling up another spreadsheet. All traced and documented. He really thought running them through Sarah's consulting company would hide them. Classic mistake. He was so busy creating a complex web he didn't notice we were watching every single thread. My phone buzzes. A photo from our couple friends, James and Sarah, accidentally running into them at a cafe across town. Perfect. More witnesses for the timeline, more evidence of the affair they think is so well hidden. Look at this, Rachel says, turning her laptop toward me. Sarah's just posted a cryptic Instagram story. A champagne glass, a hint of a hotel suite, tagged, living my best life. The location data she forgot to disable matches exactly with James's credit card charge from 10 minutes ago. Add it to the file, I say, initialing another document. Every little bit helps. Linda hands me the final set of papers. These will freeze everything the moment they're filed. Bank accounts, investment portfolios, property transfers. All of it. What about his backup accounts? Rachel asks. The ones he thinks no one knows about? I smile, pulling up another screen. Already handled. Every account he's opened in the last 5 years has my name attached as a silent co-owner. A benefit of being the trophy wife he never bothered to investigate. He forgot I specialized in asset protection before he married me. My phone lights up with James's face, his guilty check-in call. Hi honey. I answer, my voice dripping with practiced sweetness. How's golf? Great babe. Just finishing up the back 9. The clink of glasses in the background betrays his location. I put him on speaker so everyone can hear, adding another recording to our evidence file. Don't work too hard at that emergency meeting you'll have later, I say after hanging up. Rachel raises an eyebrow. Give it an hour, I explain. He always invents an emergency meeting after these golf games. Right on cue 50 minutes later. Babe, I'm so sorry. Johnson needs me to review some urgent contracts. Might be a late one. I text back the perfect understanding wife response while Linda finalizes tomorrow's timeline. Everything is scheduled down to the minute. Divorce filing at 9 a.m., account freezes at 9:05, see audit notification at 10 a.m., and just for poetic justice, it all happens during his big presentation to potential investors. Are you sure you want to wait until tomorrow? Rachel asks, watching me sort through the last of the documents. We could pull the trigger now. I shake my head, thinking of the Instagram posts I've seen them planning for tonight. Some big celebration of their love. Let them have their last hurrah. Let them toast to their future with money that won't be there tomorrow. Let them feel as secure and invincible as they want for one more night. Tomorrow, I say, signing the final preparation document with flourish. Let them sleep tonight thinking they've won. Tomorrow they learn what it means to underestimate the wrong woman. Monday morning dawns crisp and clear. A perfect day for endings disguised as beginnings. I wake up to an empty bed. James never came home last night. His side of the bed is still made untouched. My phone already has 3 notifications. His apologetic text about falling asleep at the office, Sarah's Instagram story of sunrise from a hotel room I paid for, and Linda's message confirming she's at the courthouse. Showtime, I whisper to myself, slipping into the power suit I'd laid out last night. Red Valentino, his favorite. He always said I looked killer in it. Today that word feels especially appropriate. My phone buzzes again. A group chat message from James. Everyone. Sarah and I have an announcement to make. Dinner at Le Cirque tonight, 8 p.m. Time to share some amazing news. I screenshot it for the record as our friends' congratulatory messages pour in. None of them know that Sarah's been wearing my grandmother's ring for weeks now. None of them know that Le Cirque's reservation was made on our joint credit card. The same card that will be declined by the time dessert arrives. All set. Rachel texts. Right on schedule, I reply, watching my security cameras as James pulls into our driveway. He's whistling as he enters, carrying fresh coffee and croissants. His guilty conscience breakfast routine. Morning, beautiful. He kisses my cheek and I let him, knowing it's the last time he'll ever do so. I got your favorite. You're in a good mood, I observe, accepting the coffee I won't drink. Years of practice keep my hands steady, my smile perfect. Big day at work, he grins, straightening his tie, the Hermes one I bought him for Christmas. Huge investor presentation. Could change everything. Oh honey, you have no idea. That's wonderful, I say, checking my watch. 8:47 a.m. In 13 minutes, Linda will file the papers. In 14 minutes, every account James has access to will freeze. In 15 minutes, the SEC will receive an anonymous tip about irregular financial activities at his firm. By the time he finishes his coffee, his entire world will be in free fall. Don't want to be late. He grabs his briefcase. The one still stamped with my family's business logo, a detail he never appreciated. Dinner tonight? Big news to share. I smile, remembering the engagement announcement he's already drafted on his phone. I saw it reflected in our bedroom mirror last night while he was texting Sarah. I wouldn't miss it for the world. The moment he leaves, I open my laptop. Multiple windows appear. Live feeds from his office security cameras. Amazing what being listed as a company co-founder lets you access. His email inbox, shared with me years ago and never unshared. And the courthouse filing system. 8:57 a.m. James walks into his office, still whistling. Sarah's there, perched on his desk in a dress that probably cost 3 months of her fake consulting salary. 8:59 a.m. They're kissing, celebrating their moment of triumph. His phone shows him checking their dinner reservation, the one where he plans to announce their engagement to our friends. 9 a.m. Linda's name appears in the court filing system. 9:01 a.m. The first domino falls. I watch through the security feed as James's phone starts buzzing. His bank apps pushing notifications. His executive assistant rushing in with a panicked look. Sarah's face shifting from joy to confusion as James's face drains of color. What do you mean, accounts frozen? I hear him shout through the feed. Check again. 9:05 a.m. The SEC notification hits. 9:06 a.m. His potential investors start calling to cancel the presentation. I sip my real coffee, not the one he brought, and watch it all unfold. Every scenario I'd planned for plays out exactly as predicted. James runs from his office, phone pressed to his ear, probably trying to reach our financial advisor. But Michael, my old college friend, is conveniently in meetings all day. Sarah follows him, confusion turning to panic as her own account notifications start rolling in. That fake consulting firm they thought was so clever? Currently being dissected by forensic accountants who are finding exactly what I wanted them to find. My phone lights up with messages from our friends, all responding to James's group dinner invitation. I respond with a simple "can't wait," knowing exactly how this evening will end. More notifications flood in. James trying to access our safety deposit box already emptied last week. Attempting to transfer funds from our secret offshore accounts frozen. Calling his lawyer, who's currently reviewing the mountain of evidence I've compiled. Through it all, I sit in my home office watching the security feeds like a general observing her battlefield. Every frantic move he makes was predicted, planned for, and countered before he even thought to make it. Status. Linda texts. Everything proceeding as planned, I reply, watching James pace his office, his perfect world crumbling minute by minute. He just tried the Cayman accounts. All frozen. Diana's team is having a field day with those transfers. Sarah's on her phone too now, probably realizing that her consulting firm is about to bring more attention than she wanted. The look on her face suggests she's finally understanding what being under federal investigation means. My phone buzzes one last time. James, babe, might have to cancel dinner tonight. Huge crisis at work. I smile, typing my final response as his perfect new beginning implodes. No problem, honey. I have some paperwork to take care of anyway. Good luck with your presentation. By noon, James's perfectly constructed world is showing its first real cracks. I watch through the security feed as he paces his office like a caged animal, phone pressed to his ear, having the same conversation for the 5th time. What do you mean you can't override it? He shouts at his private banker. I own the damn company. Owned, I think, taking another sip of coffee. Past tense. The SEC investigators arrived 20 minutes ago, right on schedule. They're in the conference room now, boxes of documents spread across the table. Sarah sits among them, her designer dress suddenly seeming out of place as they question her about her consulting qualifications. My phone buzzes. It's James. Honey, something's wrong with all our accounts. His voice is tight, controlled panic seeping through. Have you tried accessing anything today? Oh. I keep my voice light, curious. Let me check. I make a show of typing, though I'm really watching him through the camera feed, seeing him run his hands through his hair in frustration. That's strange. Have you called the bank? They're saying. He pauses and I can see him on the feed turning to look through his office windows at the SEC team. They're saying there's some kind of investigation. Something about irregular transfers. That sounds serious, I reply, watching Sarah being escorted to a separate conference room. Should I be worried? No, it's just a misunderstanding. He's sweating now. Listen, about dinner tonight. The engagement announcement? I say softly. Dead silence on the line. On the security feed I watch him freeze, his face draining of color. What did you say? His voice is barely a whisper. The engagement announcement. You and Sarah. Tonight at Le Cirque. With my grandmother's ring. The one you told me was stolen. Each word falls like a gavel strike. The ring that matches the one she's been wearing in her Instagram stories for the past 3 weeks. He slumps into his chair. On another screen, I watch his email light up with notifications. Major clients pulling their accounts, board members calling emergency meetings, Sarah's lawyer requesting an urgent consultation. How? He starts. How long have I known? I finish for him. Long enough to document everything. The fake consulting firm. The offshore accounts. The creative bookkeeping you thought no one would notice. I pause, letting each revelation sink in. Long enough to make sure that when this day came, there would be nothing left for you to hide behind. You did this. Realization crashes over his face on the security feed. The SEC investigation, the frozen accounts. I especially enjoyed watching you try to access the Cayman accounts this morning. I add, my voice cool. Though I have to ask, using our dead dog's name as a password? Really, James? His next words come out strangled. I can explain. To me? Or to the SEC? Because right now, they're very interested in how Sarah became CEO of a consulting firm that was billing your company millions before it legally existed. Through the feed, I watch Sarah being handed a stack of documents. Every transaction, every fake invoice, every fictional consulting report traced back to its source. Her perfect makeup doesn't hide her growing panic. You don't understand, James attempts, desperation creeping in. This will destroy everything. No, James. You destroyed everything the moment you decided our marriage vows were optional. I pause, watching another email pop up on his screen. His lawyer, dropping him as a client. I'm just making sure you pay fair market value for that decision. His corporate card declines as he tries to order lunch. His assistant quietly clears her desk, having already accepted a position at a competing firm, arranged weeks ago through my network. One by one, the pillars of his carefully constructed life crumble. The board meeting, he suddenly remembers, horror dawning. The investor presentation has been cancelled. I finish for him. That you might want to prep for a different kind of presentation. The forensic accounting team has some interesting questions about certain creative financial decisions. Sarah bursts into his office, mascara streaking her cheeks. They're saying I could face charges, she sobs. James, what did you do? I watch them through the feed, these two people who thought they were so clever, so secret, so safe in their little bubble of betrayal. The SEC team is boxing up computers. His executive team is calling an emergency board meeting. One he's specifically not invited to attend. One more thing, I add, my voice eerily calm. You might want to check the deed to your Tesla. Actually, check all the car deeds. And the house. And the vacation properties. I pause, savoring the moment. It's amazing what people don't read before signing, isn't it? The last thread of his composure snaps. Through the feed, I watch him frantically pulling up documents on his computer, finally seeing my name on everything he thought was his alone. You were right about one thing, I tell him, standing up from my desk. Tonight's dinner at Le Cirque would have changed everything. But not the way you planned. I end the call as Linda texts me, Phase 2 ready when you are. I text back a single word, begin. Through the feed, I watch as security enters James's office. His company badge no longer works. His parking pass is deactivated. His world, so perfectly built on lies and stolen money, dissolves like a sand castle at high tide. And I haven't even served him the divorce papers yet. By 3 o'clock, James's carefully constructed empire is falling faster than he can count the losses. I've moved my operation to Linda's office, where multiple screens show the systematic dismantling of everything he built. Or rather, everything we built that he thought was his alone. Another board member just jumped ship, Rachel announces, checking her tablet. That makes 7 out of 9. I watch the live feed from his office building's security cameras. James still sits in his chair, tie loosened, staring at his useless computer screen. Sarah left an hour ago, escorted by her own lawyer after breaking down in the SEC interview room. Her last words to James were caught perfectly on camera. You promised they would never find out about the money. My phone hasn't stopped buzzing with notifications. Each one is another piece of his life crumbling. Cayman First National Bank. Unusual activity alert. MX. Card suspended. Reuters. Breaking Wilson Financial under federal investigation. Loose Cirque. Reservation cancelled, payment declined. His lawyer just filed to withdraw representation. Linda notes, hanging up her phone. Apparently, James tried to pay his retainer from one of the frozen accounts. A new email pops up on my screen. The board's official statement. Effective immediately, James Wilson has been suspended from all duties pending investigation into financial irregularities. Look at this, Rachel says, turning her laptop toward me. Sarah's Instagram story shows her hastily packing suitcases into an Uber. The caption reads, "Sometimes what looks like love is just another lie." I allow myself a small smile. How's the media coverage? Going viral, Rachel confirms. Wall Street Journal just picked up the story. They're particularly interested in the fake consulting firm angle. Someone leaked Sarah's complete lack of business credentials. That someone being me, through 3 different anonymous email accounts, timed perfectly to hit when the story would do maximum damage. My phone rings, James again. His 4th call in the last hour. This time I answer. Where are you? His voice is ragged. We need to talk about this. About what, James? The SEC investigation? The board suspension? Or maybe the engagement ring you bought with company funds? I keep my voice cool, professional. Or should we discuss the offshore accounts first? You don't understand what you've done, he pleads. The investors, the clients, everything I've built. Everything we built, I correct him. Or did you forget who introduced you to half your major clients? Who helped you structure your first big deal? Who taught you about offshore banking in the first place? Through the security feed, I watch him slump further in his chair. I can fix this. Just tell me what you want. What I want. I let out a small laugh. I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything you thought was yours. I want you to experience what it's like to have your world pulled out from under you while someone you trusted watches and smiles. His computer screen lights up with another email. His country club membership suspended. Then another, his private jet share program terminated. His phone buzzes constantly with clients pulling their accounts, partners distancing themselves, friends suddenly becoming unavailable. The press is outside, he says quietly. They're asking about Sarah's consulting firm. Ah yes, the firm that somehow billed $3 million in consulting fees before it was legally registered. Interesting business model. A notification pops up on my screen. Sarah's giving an interview to a financial blog, throwing James under the bus to save herself. Smart girl. Smarter than he thought she was, anyway. The house. He starts. My name's on the deed, I remind him. Actually, my name's on everything. Remember all those documents you signed last year when we restructured our assets? You really should read the fine print, honey. Through the feed, I watch as security approaches his office again. Sir, the board has requested you vacate the premises. One more thing, I add before hanging up. You might want to check your email. The Four Seasons just confirmed they're happy to extend my stay in the presidential suite. You remember, the one you booked for your weekend with Sarah? Amazing how willing they were to transfer the reservation when I showed them proof I paid for it. I end the call as security begins boxing up his personal items. His corporate phone goes dark, service terminated. His company car's GPS shows it being towed from the executive parking spot he'll never use again. Rachel hands me a fresh stack of documents. Phase 3. I nod, signing each page with flourish. Every signature strips away another piece of the life he thought was his alone. Has Sarah's interview gone live yet? Just posted, Linda confirms. She's claiming she was manipulated into the fake consulting scheme. Says she has emails to prove it. Of course she does, I smile. I sent them to her this morning. My phone lights up with another notification. James trying to check into the Four Seasons himself, probably hoping to drown his sorrows in the bar. His card declines. All his cards decline. Through the office camera, I watch him finally stand up, gathering what's left of his dignity along with the sad box of personal items security allowed him to keep. His empire of cards built on lies and betrayal hasn't just fallen. It's been systematically dismantled brick by brick, lie by lie. Should we tell him about tomorrow? Rachel asks. I shake my head watching him walk past the press cameras, shoulders slumped, former king of his domain now reduced to taking an Uber home. Let him sleep on this first. Tomorrow's revelations deserve a fresh audience. After all, we haven't even started on his family's trust fund yet. Tuesday morning brings the kind of headlines you can't buy with PR spin. Wilson Financial CEO suspended amid fraud allegation. Wall Street romance ends in federal investigation. Fake consulting firm exposes multimillion-dollar scheme. I read them all from the comfort of my new Four Seasons suite, the same one where James and Sarah celebrated their love just days ago. The irony of enjoying their champagne preferences while watching their world burn isn't lost on me. The trust fund documents are ready, Linda announces, entering with a fresh stack of papers. His family's lawyers are, let's say, very interested in how he's been managing their generational wealth. I smile, remembering James's smug face when he talked about his family's old money. The same money he's been quietly siphoning through Sarah's consulting firm, thinking his family would never notice, never question their golden boy. My phone buzzes, a text from his mother. We need to talk. Now. The security feed from our home shows James still passed out on the couch, surrounded by empty whiskey bottles. He tried using his key card at 3 different hotels last night before realizing all his cards were frozen. The Four Seasons staff were particularly amused when he demanded his suite, the one I'm currently occupying. His sister's statement just went live, Rachel says, turning her tablet toward me. The headline reads, Family shocked by financial misconduct. We trusted him with everything. Perfect timing. I'd made sure his family received their copy of the forensic accounting report bright and early this morning. Nothing like breakfast with a side of betrayal. Sarah's doing damage control, Linda notes, showing me another headline. Whistleblower comes clean. He made me do it. I laugh softly. The evidence Sarah's turning over to the SEC is exactly what I wanted her to find. Every email, every document, every transaction carefully crafted to tell the story I've been writing for months. A commotion in the hotel lobby catches my attention on the security feed. James, unshaven and disheveled, attempting to talk his way past security. My wife is up there. In my suite. I text the front desk. Mr. Wilson is no longer associated with this reservation. Please have security escort him out. The board meeting starts in an hour, Rachel reminds me. They're voting on permanent removal. I nod, slipping into a black Chanel dress. Another one James paid for during his guilty shopping sprees. Are the shareholders ready? Oh, they're ready, Linda grins. Turns out they don't appreciate their CEO using company funds to finance his affair and fake consulting scheme. My phone lights up with another notification. Sarah giving a tearful interview on a morning financial show. I was young and naive. He said the consulting firm was legitimate. She plays the victim well, I observe. Almost as well as she played the seductress. Speaking of playing roles, Rachel says, your car's ready whenever you are. I check my reflection one last time. Power suit perfect, makeup flawless, expression composed. Today isn't about revenge. It's about justice, served with a side of poetic timing. The boardroom falls silent as I enter. James, forced to attend as a formality, looks like he's aged years overnight. Sarah sits at the opposite end, her designer outfit replaced by something appropriately subdued for someone facing federal charges. Mrs. Wilson, the board chairman, greets me. Thank you for agreeing to take emergency control of the company during this situation. James's head snaps up. What? I take my seat, his seat technically since the emergency board vote last night. Did you forget who owns controlling interest in the company, honey? Check the shareholding structure. I believe you signed those papers yourself last year. The color drains from his face as the documents are distributed. His signature on every page, transferring control to me in case of emergency. Just another document in the pile he never bothered to read. Now, I address the board, ignoring James's strangled attempt to speak. Let's discuss the company's future direction. I believe we all agree changes are needed. Sarah attempts to slip out quietly. Please stay, Ms. Mitchell, I call out pleasantly. The SEC has some follow-up questions about your consulting expertise. Or lack thereof. The next hour is a masterclass in corporate dismantling. Every scheme exposed, every fraud documented, every lie unraveled. James and Sarah sit there, watching as their perfect plan crumbles under the weight of meticulous evidence. One final item, I announce as the meeting concludes. The family trust. James goes completely still. The trust, his safety net, his backup plan, his birthright. The one thing he thought I couldn't touch. Your mother asked me to give you this. I slide a document across the table. The trustees are concerned about recent investment decisions. He opens it with trembling hands. Inside, notice of his removal as trust beneficiary, effective immediately. His family's old money now is untouchable as everything else he thought was his. The police have some questions as well, I add casually. About certain creative accounting practices with the trust funds. They'll be waiting outside. As security leads them out, James to the waiting police, Sarah to her own legal reckoning. I remain seated, queen of the empire he thought he'd built alone. Justice, it turns out, tastes better than revenge. 1 month later. The penthouse view of Manhattan stretches out before me, the city lights twinkling like the diamonds I never returned. The Wall Street Journal sits on my desk, today's headline already framed for my office wall. Wilson Financial rebounds under new leadership, stock prices soar. My phone buzzes with a news alert. James Wilson pleads guilty in financial fraud case. I take a sip of champagne, the expensive kind, the kind he used to impress Sarah with, and savor both the taste and the moment. The last of the paperwork is filed. Linda announces, entering my office with a final stack of documents. As of 4:32 p.m. today, you're officially divorced. I sign the papers with the Mont Blanc pen James gave me for our last anniversary. Another bit of poetic justice, using his gifts to sign away his future. Have you seen this? Rachel asks, showing me her tablet. Sarah's giving another interview, this time from her parents' home in New Jersey. Her plea deal required full cooperation, which she gave with impressive enthusiasm. Hell hath no fury like a mistress facing federal charges. Ms. Mitchell provided crucial evidence, the article reads, leading to additional charges in the expanding financial fraud investigation. I smile, remembering how eagerly Sarah handed over everything once she realized I'd given her the perfect exit strategy. A few strategic emails, some carefully planted evidence, and suddenly she was the victimized whistleblower instead of the willing accomplice. His mother called again. Linda mentions, settling into one of my office chairs. The family wants to thank you for protecting their trust fund. Apparently you saved them from losing 3 generations of wealth. Ironic, I muse, considering James always said I didn't understand old money values. My assistant enters with more news. The company's stock has jumped another 15 points since I announced the restructuring plan. Turns out removing fraudulent leadership is good for business. Who knew? They're calling you the Phoenix of Wall Street, Rachel notes, reading from another article. Rising from the ashes of corporate scandal to lead one of the most remarkable turnarounds in financial history. I walk to the window looking out at the empire I helped build and now fully own. In the reflection I see not the trophy wife James thought he married, but the woman I always was, brilliant, calculating, unstoppable. Have you heard from him? Linda asks quietly. I nod toward a letter on my desk. James's final attempt at, what? Reconciliation? Manipulation? It doesn't matter anymore. Dear Catherine, it begins, I understand now what I lost. Too late, James. Too late by exactly 15 years, 3 months and 27 days. The media wants an interview, Rachel mentions. Forbes specifically. They're doing a piece on women in finance. Tell them yes, I decide. It's time to tell my own story. My phone buzzes one last time, a text from James's sister. Thank you for saving our family legacy. He never deserved you. I think back to that first Instagram post, the one that started it all. James, so proud of his new relationship status, thinking he was writing the beginning of his new life. He never realized he was actually writing the end of his old one. The SEC investigation is expanding, Linda notes. They're looking into his previous ventures now. Let them, I say. I've given them everything they need. Every document, every transaction, every lie carefully preserved and annotated. Rachel raises her glass. To justice served cold? I shake my head, raising my own glass. To underestimating the wrong woman. As the sun sets over Manhattan, I open my laptop to review tomorrow's board meeting agenda. The company's doing well, better than ever actually. Turns out removing fraudulent leadership and installing someone who actually understands finance does wonders for the bottom line. The last rays of sunlight catch my wedding ring, the only thing I kept from my marriage. Not out of sentiment but as a reminder. A reminder that sometimes the most valuable things in life are the lessons we learn from those who try to destroy us. One last thing, Linda says, pulling out a final document. Your name change paperwork is ready. Do you want to go back to your maiden name? I consider this for a moment, looking at the empire I now control. No, I decide. Let him see my name, his name, on everything he lost. Let him read about every success, every triumph, every achievement he could have shared if he hadn't been so blind. The New York lights flicker to life as darkness falls. From my penthouse office, the city looks like a constellation of possibilities. James saw me as a trophy to be displayed and discarded. He never understood that I was always the hunter, never the prize. What's next? Rachel asks, gathering her things. I smile, turning from the window to face my future. Everything, I reply. Everything is next. Because the thing about rising from the ashes? You emerge stronger, wiser, and ready to soar. James thought he was writing our ending, but he only wrote his own. My story. It's his beginning. And this time I'm holding the pen.